started, I wanted to share a postcard. And I got a postcard earlier. I've actually had this for a little bit. I was hoping to get other pieces of mail to share with you, but this is the only thing I got to share with you for right now. And it says, "Hello from Colorado. Thanks for your insight in the economy." Well, thank you very much for the postcard. I really appreciate it. Today, I wanted to share a couple of articles with you and have this discussion to talk about like what's going on with the housing market right now. When you think about how high the rents have gone, how high the prices are, how elevated the interest rates are, and how low the new home starts and building permits are. You take this all into account and it doesn't look good, right? Now, one of the articles is talking about how it is that the rents are now elevated to the point that the lower income are now facing the most pressure. And what was it? The statistic was saying something about like the amount of households or amount of people who are using 50% of their income to pay the rent has increased by 1.5 million people. So this is something interesting to think about in its own, right? So if this rent, and not to mention like if it's not just the rent, it's also like all the rest of the stuff that's gone up in price due to inflation. When you think about the pressure on the lower income, it's like, devastatingly high, as far as like how intense that pressure is feeling. But then you think about like what is their ability to save at that point? There's none, right? Like their ability to save when you have a 50% of your income going to just to be in the house or be in the apartment, and then the high inflation that goes along with it, that doesn't give you any room to save, which means that, saving the down payment for a house is like almost an impossible task. So there's an ever increasing amount of people who are facing this type of position, right? Where they're spending ever increasing amounts of their money on rent and their ability to save is diminishing. Okay? And this is something that's like, I don't see any change to this coming to the future. It's like the problem's only going to get worse. Now, when we think about buying a house, take a look at the other article that's out there that I leave down in the description. And now in this article, they're talking about how the increased price and the elevated interest rates has now made the payment very difficult on the average income out there, which we always knew that the payment was going to be difficult. But now, in order to acquire that house with the average payment out there, you have to put increasingly amount of down payment in order to lower the principal enough that the interest rate that you are paying that the payment that you are making will be able to accommodate the interest rate that is left on that principal payment. So basically, in order to make the payment affordable for you, or that they're willing to give you if you're borrowing money, requires an ever increasing amount of a down payment on a huge house, on a more expensive home. So now you think about it, it's like the price goes up, the elevated interest rates, the ability to come up with the down payment for that is now diminished. The payment that you need for a down payment is ever increasing, and there's no signs of this changing. And every time they talk about the possibility of there being an interest rate cut, you actually see the mortgage rates begin to fall, which puts upward pressure on the housing prices. Now, all the way at the very end of the story, where do the new houses come from? Builders. Builders provide inventory. So now, when you look at the inventory, or you look at the builders and what it is that they're doing for providing inventory, permit issuance is down, right? Home starts is down. Builders don't want to build right now because they are very nervous about the ability to sell those houses going into the future. See, like, if you can sell a house for the price that you believe that you can now, then you might be willing to do it. But if you feel that those prices might go down in the future, you would not be willing to start a home. And then on top of it, if you're looking at the buyer traffic as being very negative, and then on top of it, the savings that is required to buy a house goes up, and the ability for them to save goes down, none of this environment looks good. And so now I find it very interesting when I think about like what it is that can come to the future as this problem seems to only grow worse. Now, I know a lot of people will think, okay, well, it's going to take a crash. Well, sure, right? It'll take a crash to change the system, change the way things are going. But what does that crash really look like? And I mean, is it going to be a rise in unemployment that causes people not to be able to make their house payment? And by not making their house payment, then you would find a bunch of houses going into foreclosure, and then the ability to pick up a house for cheap would then present its opportunity then? I mean, is that what a lot of people seem to think? I mean, really, if you think about it, if it's difficult to get a loan now, how difficult would it be to get a loan if everybody is unemployed? Like, if you have a situation in which that the rising unemployment has taken place, that's probably due to the fact that there's financial markets aren't doing well and people aren't investing in businesses and the economy is slowing down, and banks aren't going to be very likely to loan money to people who don't have 20% down payment. So the opportunity really only presents itself to those who have cash, which would be the rich. Right. So ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor. That's what I see taking place. In fact, it seems that there's really no other direction that can go. You know, if you're a rent slave now, you are going to permanently be a rent slave because there is no situation in which that they are going to provide for people that would allow you to exit that rent slavery. The higher that the rents go, the more of your monthly salary goes into paying the rent, then diminishes your ability to ever exit the renting community. You would forever be there, the rent slave, to never be a buyer. See, this is important to understand because this isn't the effects of something that you can change. Like, the effects of this is something from history. This is something that was set into motion decades, if not centuries ago. And to think that this is going to change in a single year or a single administration or even really in a lifetime, I don't think it's even possible. This is on a one-way course. And it's obvious now that there is no real better evidence of how the abundance of money really presents itself in the system than the rents and leases that people pay. It's getting worse, and it's not going to get better. And it's better to recognize it for what it is and to know that you're going to have to do something that's far different than what it is that your dad did or your grandfather did. Okay? It's going to take something that's going to be very unique to the situation because we are no longer in the situation we once were. We're in a very unique situation. And it's time to realize that there is ways of getting around the issues that we are now facing or that most people are facing. And it's, and it's a requirement of understanding that this is what's taken place. It's to understand how this monetary system works. It's to understand that the 9-to-5 job is going to sustain your life, but it's not going to provide anything for you, and that you need to go far beyond that. All right, 9 minutes into it. I think that was a fair video. Go hit the like button when you jump into the live stream. We've got 223 people watching with 46 likes. Go hit the like button. The algorithm will pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in. If we can get it up to 100 likes, we'll carry it on for, let's see, we got 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. Go get it. Go hit the like button. Get it up to 100 likes, and we'll stick around for a half an hour. All right. Buying a home, you got to be kidding. No, buying a home is the only way. There's only three people who live independently in the state. The prince, the property owner, whoever the prince is, I don't know who that is. The prince, the property owner, and the capitalist who invest into that system. So no, you don't have to buy a house. You don't have to be part of the home, being part of that property ownership, you can be a capitalist and you can invest into the system. You can find those businesses, those dividend paying stocks, those, interest bearing accounts, whatever it is that you can find out there that's going to return money back to you. But if you want to live independently of the state, there's only one other way to do it, and that's being a property owner. I'm just looking at what's going on in the future of this country, and I have no desire to own property here. It's just going to get worse and worse, and it's already bad. Yeah, so think about it. If you don't own property, what are you going to do? You're going to have to live in a van or rent, right? There's no other choice. That's the only two things you can do. So one way, yeah, like, I understand when you buy a house that you will never own it. You will always pay taxes. And me, I mean, I'm 40 years old taking out a 30-year loan. I will never own the home. But the value of the home does go up, and I do have the ability to own the equity, right? And that's something that I do get. And there is a time in which that I might be able to become a landlord and rent this house out and get a return on that. And the way that rents are going, I wouldn't be surprised if I was be able to make a profit off of them in 10 or 15 years when I'm done living here, right? Once the boys are raised. Like, to me, being a property owner, I understand what it is that means. Now, owning a single property doesn't really give me a whole lot of benefit, but if you own a few properties out there, next thing you know, you are living independently of the state. Right? In a lot of ways, of course, you are dependent on property rights and requiring to pay taxes and all the other crap that goes with it. But still, you're going to be relying on the system one way or the other, unless you're like some hermit living off in the middle of nowhere, raising your own food and stuff like that. You are part of the system. There's nothing you can do about that. All right. I'm looking for 2 acres, got a travel trailer. Yeah. Are you watching the yen still rising against the dollar? Is it rising or falling? Didn't it fall for the longest time? Lazy, it's certainly the dream for Bubbles and his kitties. Alright, let's move down here. Renting have benefits too, like it's easier, move closer to a better job. Absolutely. Rose fan, absolutely. If you have a strategic way of going about it, renting is absolutely a very smart way of going about it. You're very nimble. At the end of 30 days, you have no liability. You're done. I have 30 years of liability. That sucks. You know how like, if I had somebody who's just like, dude, you can make $300,000 if you just move here and you got to do it in a month, right? And it would be like, well, 300, I might do it. But like, if it was some kind of significant, increase in pay or something, and be like, man, I can't leave this place. I'm kind of stuck here. I got things going on or whatever. If you were renting, you'd be like, what? Bounce, right? You're out of here. See ya. And it was just like, don't even second guess it. And being nimble in that fashion can give you the ability to then travel around and make money in different locations, or just be in different locations to make money without having the requirement of being tied down to a house. And I totally get that. Like, I get it. Like, rich people have zero liability. Like, they have 100% assets, zero liabilities, right? That thing is a huge liability, right? It's nothing but liability for the next 30 years. Now, it can be an asset at the same time, but it's a liability because I have a requirement every single month to come up with a payment, right? That's not what rich people do. Rich people have other people making those payments, right? You use good debt to acquire assets, right? It doesn't come anything out of you, it comes out of other people. Moving on. Wow, look at all the comments coming in. All right. You got 1 minute to get it up to 100 likes. We're at 87 right now with 307 people watching. I'll give you 1 minute to get it up there. Otherwise, we'll just call it quits on this stream and go find something else to do with our Sunday. All right. Is population growth the biggest factor that pushes prices up? No. It's supply and demand. That's it. Like, that's what pushes prices, is supply and demand. And then on top of that, the availability of the money that's at hand, right? So if there's only $4 in the system, then guess what? It's probably going to be pretty cheap. So yes, it depends on how much money is out there in the system, but it's really supply and demand that comes down to it. And then the access to the money in order to acquire the asset that is that is out there. So it's population. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but it's really that's it. Like if there was everybody had the ability to build a house, like if you could go out there and slam a house together for $25,000, $30,000, you think there would be a shortage of houses? Of course not. There wouldn't be any shortage of houses. But you could put a tiny little shack together for $30,000, $40,000, but nobody's going to do that because the cost it takes in order to get a permit to do a tiny little shack would cost more than $30,000 or $40,000. So nobody's going to do that. They're going to build this giant home because they need to make it profitable in order to do that. And there's no profit inside of building this little tiny shack unless you already own the property and you have the things run there and it's all like, stuff that you already own, then it's okay, then I guess so. But going out there and buying a piece of property and having the utilities put to it and doing all the other stuff and then going and putting a little tiny shack on it, it doesn't work. It doesn't, like, the numbers don't work out that way. Now, it does for an individual if they have the money and they don't care, then okay, well, whatever. Got a mortgage at 40, just paid it off. Yeah. And see, that's just the thing. Like, I would pay it off early if it wasn't such a low interest rate, but I got a 3.125% interest rate, right? So, yeah, I could pay it off, but there are investments out there that I think that I could put money towards that is going to be far beyond the 3.125 that would then benefit me in the longer run to go ahead and go towards the investments as opposed to, paying off the debt early, especially if we have this inflation expectation that runs persistently into the future and elevated inflation is still persistent, then having a 3.125 mortgage, interest rate is kind of like making money going into the future if you have elevated inflation. So I just don't see any need to pay the house off early when there's so many better things that I could be doing with that money. And that's really what I see, with that. If the interest rate was higher, then it would totally make sense, right? If you have debt, there is no better investment than to pay off the debt. And so that's easy. Like people are always looking for things that they can invest in. And it's easy. It's just like, okay, so do you have credit card? Do you have a car? Do you have, all these things? Do you have a high interest house loan? I mean, if you have all those things, that's easy to invest. You just blast your money into those debts, and that's what you invest in because that's really, there's no better return on your money than to pay off that damn debt. So once you pay the debt off, you will have already positioned yourself into being somebody who is a saver, right? But instead of savings, you have been paying off debt. Now you can immediately save that money. Once you learn to save for a while, you have a decent emergency fund, you feel comfortable about your position and stuff, then you can start taking your chances into investing into real things, right? Start buying into the dividend paying stocks, take on a rental income, doing those type of things, right? I mean, it's not hard. Like if you have debt, that's easy. You're an investor. Just pay off the debt. That's investing. And so people are always like trying to make it more complicated by saying, "Where do I go? Where do I put my money? How do I do that?" Because they're trying to get their money into something that is going to be like a lottery ticket that's going to pay off their debts. It doesn't work that way. You have to take your money and pay off the damn debts first. That's it. That's the only way to do it. And if you have an extreme amount of debts that just feel overbearing and overwhelming, you got a lot harder in time to work, right? You're gonna have to figure out how to, come up with either side hustles or something else to start knocking that debt down. And that's really what it comes down to. Once you knock the debt off, it's like it's like everything starts to clear up. It starts to because see, your mind's set into a different mode, right? It's set in a scarcity. It's not in an abundance. It's not really into the flow of money being attractive to you. You're into a chasing of it. If you chase something, it runs. And so it's just like once you get out of debt, then it all that stuff neutralizes, and it's just like, okay, cool. Now what can I do? I got breathing room. I can do it. I don't have to do it. I can whatever, right? Once it neutralizes, everything becomes so much easier to deal with. But when you're in a chasing mode, I gotta get the money, then yeah, it just runs like hell from you. All right, Taco Bell will own everything and we'll be happy about it. Hey, Brody, what's happening, man? Simon, you are one of the most incredible insightful people out there. Thank you for all you do. Well, I appreciate it, Brody, man. Thank you very much. We got that like button up to 140 people. That's so appreciative. We're going to stick it out here till at least a half hour on the video. That's another 10 minutes. Keep hitting that like button. We get it up to 200 people. We'll stick it around for a little bit longer. We got 358 people watching right now. All right, can you talk a little bit about lumber prices and how you see prices playing out in the rest of the year? Thanks. Okay, yeah, sure. All right, so this is a really good indicator, and I think this is probably the best one to follow as far as what's going to take place within the building industry. And I think this is really good for manufacturing just in general, regardless if it has anything to do with building itself, like building a home. Because you really think about it, how much stuff goes into building a home after it's done, right? Think about all the appliances, thinking about all the furniture, thinking about all the new stuff. Because when people buy a new home, they generally don't take their old crap, they buy new crap, right? And so when you buy this new stuff, this is where all the manufacturing of all the rest of the crap comes from, all the TVs, all the furniture, all the tables, spoons, the appliances, all the crap. So when you have a slowdown in lumber production, then you know you have a slowdown in building of new homes. If you have a slowdown in the building of new homes, then you probably have a slowdown of people wanting to buy new stuff to put in those new homes. And so this is a huge indicator of the manufacturing that is going to be taking place throughout the rest of the economy. Lumber is a very good indicator. It is not the only indicator. It is just one of many out there. And I know a lot of people told me you can't look at lumber and predict the economy. They're wrong. I can, right? And I have. And I've been doing it for quite a while now. And it's more prevalent today than it has been at any other time. If you just look at what's going on with the lumber future prices right now, trading at 470 per thousand, 471, 475, whatever it was. But at anything under 500 per thousand, and these mills don't want to operate. Like they are like, this is not a product that we are selling at a profit at 470 per thousand. Now, you have to understand like futures is just a small section of the lumber market, right? It's just the one that we can look at and we can actually focus and say, hey, there's a number, right? There's something called print or cash. Okay. And now this is what the mill is selling for today. You call them up. Hey, how much can I buy some lumber for right now? Whatever. They have a price that they sell. Every single mill, right, competes against each other and they all have their price. Now, at the end of the day, generally they're all going to be within, a competitive price. They all want to sell it for the highest price, but they all want to sell lumber. So, which one are you going to end up being in? So they're not set on a price. We have to sell it at this price, right? These future contracts are for a certain amount of lumber months weeks into the future, right? But daily does lumber move. So if you have lumber futures dropping dramatically, what you have is builders, you have brokers, you have retailers, you have everybody saying, we're not excited about holding inventory. We're not moving it. We're not, it's not a hot commodity, right? And so now if they were like, holy shit, we need this stuff. We definitely need it. We have projects coming up. We have no chance of slowdown or anything happening here. We need that lumber. Then you would see those lumber futures moving up, right? So it's just a reflection of what's happening within the market, but it's not telling the exact story of what's happening in the market. The print, the cash, that is telling what's exactly going on within the market. Now, in order to see that, you have to be, well, one, join Madison's Lumber Reporter. That would be a wonderful way of going about it. And if you go and talk to Keta, she'll probably, I haven't been on Keta's site for quite a while, but Madison's Lumber Reporter talks about that exact number. She is in contact with mills all over the United States and in Canada. She's one of the that family is one of the oldest, or businesses is one of the oldest in doing that, where they do this analysis of all these different mills on how much they're producing, how much they're selling lumber for, and they compile that into a report for the other builders and retailers and everybody else out there. There's another one called Random Lengths. They're the most popular. They're the biggest ones out there. You can subscribe or buy into one of these things. Know somebody who works at an agency who might be subscribed to these people as well. And there you can get the cash or print price. Now, pretty much that's, proprietary information for most people, but it doesn't necessarily run that far off from the futures price. It can at times when things get really wild, but for the most part, it runs fairly close to the futures price. And then you can also, I believe, at bar charts, I think they actually have a cash price that you can go and look at, where I don't know what mills that they've compiled that information from, but I think you can actually get a cash price. And again, it's not usually that far off from the futures price. So, with all that being said, right now within the futures or within the lumber market, what I am experiencing, what I am seeing, what I'm hearing about is inventory depletion on a massive scale. It has taken place like you wouldn't believe. And it's hard to find the articles on this. Now, you can find some articles talking about mill curtailments and, shutting down production and pulling, a bunch of material off the production lines. You can find some articles about it, but not nearly as much as what I'm experiencing and hearing personally when I'm, making my calls and looking around for lumber and, doing my business. The walk-in traffic is slow, which is evidence of everything else as far as the permit issuance and housing starts, that I'm seeing clearly seeing evidence of that. The phone calls that I'm getting are very few and far between when it comes to looking for contractors, looking for, people who can, do builds and stuff like that. Most of it is very small, like kind of more of like maintenance kind of stuff, like the repairs that were needing to be done this summer before the winter kicks in. Those are the type of phone calls that I am starting to get right now. So it just lends into the idea of what is happening within the building permit issuance and housing starts. So if this continues, then what we're going to find is gaps in inventory, which I am seeing. Like, there's different grades of lumber that you can get. So 2x4 standing and better. Well, you can get 2x4 standing and better, which is just one step above utility grade, which is just crap lumber. But then you can get something called a premium grade, right? So it's a little bit better. You have less wane, less edge knots taking place. It's a little bit, higher grade lumber. It's just, it's a premium grade. And then you can step it up into something called precision cuts, right? So precision cuts are exactly cut to 96 inches. They're meant to be used for studs. Everything else is meant to be used maybe as a stud, but maybe not necessarily. It's just used for blocking or cutting it up for bracing or something of that. And then the standing and better stuff, again, the same reason. It's just like it might be cut enough to length to do some rough framing, but the precision cuts are definitely a much, cleaner, nicer lumber. Premiums are pretty good, and then the standard and better is crap. Well, the premium grade is pretty much gone, right? You can't find it anymore. You can only find the highest end, the precision cuts, and you can find the low grade. Well, the precision cuts aren't really popular. Not too many people buy them. The premiums are fairly popular, but the mills don't make a lot of them, so those things are gone, and now they're only milling the two and better, right? The standard and better stuff. So now they're only milling exactly what it is that is selling, which is they're going to be the 2x4 studs, the 2x4 plate stock, 2x6 studs, 2x6 plate stock. Then you start stepping into the wides, which again, I'm starting to find depletions of, like as far as inventory. You go and order, like, say, something that's fairly popular in the wides, a 2x8 16, and you may not find that unit out there. You might have to wait a couple of days or something, which isn't necessarily typical. Normally, you'd be able to find it right away. Well, those things are starting to come up in shorter supply, which is, again, results of the mill curtailment that we are seeing and experiencing for the last 6 months and more intensifying here over the last few months. If lumber futures continue to stay down like they are, then you are going to find the mill curtailments getting even worse. They're going to move into the future with less inventory, and if there's any pop, if that damn mortgage rate continues to fall, the Federal Reserve actually lowers rates, like puts out the credible threat really hard. We're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And then boom, does it. Man, you're going to see the build boom start to jump up because the buyer is going to run in. They're going to be like, woohoo, time is on. We're going to be able to refinance into the future. Let's buy now. Right. And once the buyer traffic shows up, the builders are going to be like, this is our moment. And they're going to run in there and they're going to start building. And then you're going to start seeing that there is not enough lumber in the system to handle any kind of intense increase to the builder demand. That was the lumber update. You have 30 seconds to go and hit the like button. We have 191 likes right now. If you want me to continue on, you'll go hit that like button right now. We'll get it up to 200 likes, and we'll continue on streaming for another 15 minutes or so. You got 40 seconds. All right. Can you talk a little bit? We just talked about lumber. All right. Okay, 201. You guys did it. Congratulations. We'll move on for another. We'll go to 45 minutes on this live stream. All right. In the past, you've had cash, you crushed it. In the past, if you had cash, you crushed it. You know if that will continue, but people who have 500,000 or better can pay rent on a nice home, rental and interest only. Well, see, that's just the thing. Like, this is the separation between the rich and the poor, and it's going to get worse. See, like, how are you supposed to save? How are you supposed to save if the average income is now taken, like, if it takes, like, I don't know what the average is, what comparatively to rent, but the lowest income, I guess, is really where I was thinking, right? If the lower income is now requiring, if it requires 50% of their income in order to pay rent, and that's increased by 1.5 million people, then you can imagine the pressure that it must put on the rest of the people out there, right? Because this pushes up the line. So now the savings and everything else that everybody can do out there is beginning to diminish, and you can see evidence of it at the lower end. Now, at the other side of things, the people who own property, the people who are collecting rent, all that other stuff, that is starting to increase, right? So this is the separation. This is that wedge that's being driven. And you can see it started like, decades ago, and it's only getting worse now. So it's so important to understand it and see it and to get on. You don't have to buy property. You can get into other things, right? You can be the capitalist. But if you're not going to be the capitalist, or you want to be the capitalist plus the property owner, then you got to understand why this is taking place and how it is going to be so difficult on the people out there. They are going to suffer and pain from this. Like, there is no doubt about it, right? Rent slavery is painful. And like people in this pain, it's not painful in any other sense than the frustration mentally on you is just like, it's hard to deal with. It's depressing, you know? And it's better to understand, like, there's no fixing this. Like, this is why it's so crazy about it and so hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, is that they're looking for a fix. There is no fix. They can't fix it. And so it's better to understand that. We got a super chat here. Let's go check that out. Hey, Bryleem? Sorry if I messed the name up. $20. Thank you so much. Hey, UE. Thanks for your advice about overcoming the dismal topic of economics. Finally grasped and accepted it for what it is. Can you please expand on the seventh step based on 7 steps you were talking about the other day? Expand on the seventh step? Well, okay, so thank you very much for the $20. And yeah, I would love to expand on this particular topic. This is kind of like my own breakdown of the Cantillon effect in 7 steps, right? So it's a very quick, easy to understand 7 steps to just about any economy, and it doesn't matter if it's a nation or a business or an individual person. It doesn't, it like, it, a city, it doesn't matter, right? It all kind of goes down the same way, right? And it starts with the industriousness of the people, right? When the people are industrious, they come up with a good idea, they figured it out. They're farmers, they're builders, they're engineers, they're mechanics, they're whatever it is that they figured it out. They have something that they are producing and saving, and they're doing a really good job of it, right? So they're industrious people. That's number one. Right. Number 2 is they move into a savings with that production, right? So the industrious moves into savings and productions. And what happens when you save and produce, right? The same thing is always going to happen when you save and produce, right? You're going to start increasing your standard of living, because nobody wants to save and produce and then not enjoy it, right? So what happens is you start raising your standard of living. Now, what this does is it starts to increase the prices of everything, right? Which starts to put pressure on what starts bringing in the foreign manufacturing, right? So what happens is that if you get new money coming in, right, because you're industrious, you produced and saved, you get this new money in, which is sort of raise your standard of living. What happens is that the money starts to come in and it starts to raise the consumption. Once you have consumption raised, then what you have is a supply-demand imbalance. Prices start to increase. Well, when you got new money coming in, you don't want to spend it on higher priced goods. What you want to do is you want to enjoy that new money at the same prices that you had earned the money at, right? So now when these prices begin to increase, that starts putting foreign production into play. So now foreign producers start to compete with the domestic manufacturers. So again, you had industrious people who produced and stayed, raised their standard of living, and then started putting pressure on the domestic manufacturer, or started putting the foreign production into play. That in turn started to raise the luxuries, right? So this rise in luxuries of enjoying the foreign production really starts to put the domestic manufacturers out of play, right? So now the domestic manufacturers are out of here, right? They're starting to get pressure from the foreign production and the rise in luxuries. Now, this is going to do something that's very interesting, and that is that once the money turns off, everybody falls into poverty, right? So this is kind of like the seven-step process, is that once you have moved into luxuries and exporting your domestic manufacturing, the moment that the money turns off, everybody falls into poverty. Well, this is the United States. Think about it. The United States was a manufacturing powerhouse back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Moved into the 70s, couldn't do it anymore. Our rise from producing everything that was always awesome to the world sent us their gold. The world wanted their gold back, and we had it all, and we said, no, no, thank you. We're going to keep it. So here, you can use these dollars, and we're going to sever ourselves from the gold standard, and we're not producing, bringing new money in. We're going to issue out debt to bring new money in. So now the new money comes in from debt issuance, not from production of all the wonderful things that we used to do. It comes from U.S. treasuries and the selling of U.S. treasuries, and this is essentially how we get the new money in. Now, the problem with this is that it's continued to this very day that we keep issuing out U.S. treasuries, which kept bringing the new money in. Well, as long as you have new money coming into the system, you're going to have something called the rich and the poor separation, right? The inequality that is happening from it. This new money comes in, the people who are enjoying that new money, they're spending it on this foreign production, which is putting pressure on the domestic manufacturers, which is driving the wedge again, right? This is really how it starts to take place. So if there was ever a time in which the U.S. treasuries was no longer being issued in the fashion that it is today, that's where the new money is coming from, then the new money turns off. If there's no new money coming in, then we all begin to fall into poverty, as we do not produce enough here within the nation to supply ourselves with the standard of living that we are enjoying today. It would just be over. All of it in a nutshell. All right. Did you get all that? I hope that. Jesus, I got stuck in my teeth. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for the $20. I mean, that's essentially how it all goes down. The luxuries. It's the move into luxuries that really does it. And that's like, because you can't really stop anybody from increasing their standard of living. But the moment that they increase their standard of living and they start buying into the foreign production, that is the luxury, right? They're starting to move into luxuries right there. They didn't have to buy the foreign production, but they didn't want to spend it on higher priced goods. And because they didn't want to spend it on higher priced goods, that's what brought it in. But if it continues, then you move into luxuries. You start buying all the fancier whatever that's being produced. And the more that happens, the worse the problem gets, until eventually, everybody, until you have like, the only people it's advantageous for is the people who are importing the foreign production and selling it, right? It's advantageous for them. It's advantageous for the people who have access to the new money, right? Because like people who are closest to the money, they're the ones who are buying the properties and renting it out and stuff like that. So it's advantageous to them. Like, all this is good for a handful of people. But if you had the good manufacturing job, well, now your good manufacturing job has to compete against people who are doing your same job someplace else, and they're going to do it for a hell of a lot less. And so now what are you going to do about it? It was just like, well, I think my job should, pay me a fair wage. Well, yeah, it should. You think it should. I think it should too, but it doesn't. Even a good job sucks, right? It's not the way it works anymore. It's just like our system is not like, it's not set up in a way that is going to be everlasting, because it's not something that can be controlled. It's not even set up. It's just one that is just evolving over time. And it's better to understand how these economic forces are playing out and how it is that people are interacting to them, because most people want to put blame around there, but it's nothing to blame. It's just an is. It's just like, watching anything else happen, it's just like it has a cycle and an evolution to it, and eventually it comes to an end. This is no different. All right, thank you so much to John for the $4.99. People have a doom and gloom outlook on economics because they've never learned austerity. Well, people have a doom and gloom outlook because they don't understand what's happening, right? Most people want to blame. And if you blame, then you're going to have a doom and gloom. You're going to say, man, it's their fault. There's an excuse. It's this external that's happening there. And they'll never look to the internal. And so long as it's an external, they'll always be looking for something to change out there to fix whatever it is that the problems are because they never looked at it as an internal issue. Right? They always blamed it on an external because economics is external, but it's not. Economics is literally individual. It's your individual person and the decisions that you make. That's the economy. All of us working simultaneously makes this bigger economy evolve and move and do what it does, right? But us as an individual person is the economy within itself. The decisions that I make, the things that I need to do within my life are going to be so different from everybody else's that it can possibly be the same economy. If I was 18 years old trying to figure out how it is and I'm going to get started and save and provide for myself going into the future is going to be a hell of a lot different than if I'm 80 years old trying to figure out how it is I'm going to hold on to my retirement for the rest of my years, right? Not even the same thing. They're not doing the same thing at all. They're not even remotely thinking about the same things, but yet we're all looking at the same stuff. Right? I mean, we're all, participating in the same, general environment, but nobody is experiencing the same thing. We all do something different. All right. Wow, you guys are hitting that like button. I'm loving it. We're up to 260 likes right now. We're almost up to that 45-minute. What did I say? I don't even know what I told you. Did I say 250 or something like that? We'd stick around. All right, keep hitting that like button if you can. I don't know. Let's see. We got 5 minutes. I don't know. Get it up to 280. Get it up to 280. We'll stick around for another 15 minutes. Take it to an hour. All right. Are you just explaining the rat race? Sure. Yeah, I'm explaining the rat race. That's it. Okay. We are all looking at the same prawns. Good morning, everyone. All right. The Roman Empire had a similar system to the Western civilization. Will the modern Rome fail? All of it fails. All of it fails when the new money turns up, no matter what you do. Like, if you could figure out a way, like, people were like, well, this, particular society existed for hundreds of years, whatever. Well, yeah, way back in the day, I can imagine that you would probably have a society that could exist for hundreds of years, maybe even 1,000 years, whatever. If you were a nation of industrious people who figured out how to work the maritime routes, then you could have a flow of new money that constantly poured in because you were providing a service, right? You were selling stuff all over and you were just, bringing the money back. And like the new money was a constant stream. It was a constant stream of new money coming in, right? Because you had this maritime capability. Right? That's it. Like, yeah, I mean, you think of it like if your capability of bringing new money in was from agriculture, you could only produce as much agriculture as your land would allow. Like you could only get so much out of it, right? And that was it. You would be limited. And if everybody started to raise their luxuries off of the new money, they would eventually get to a point where it couldn't get no more new agriculture coming in, right? And so if the farmers there were all riding in their fancy chariots and stuff like that, going, yeah, man, we are just killing it here as we were having all these grain exports. But now that the price and all these other people are producing grain and stuff, we just don't have it going on like we once did, and the new money is turning off. And because we all had these luxuries that we were importing stuff and we weren't making it for ourselves, boom, here we are falling into depression. But if you had a maritime thing and it was just like, no, we just keep building ships and we just keep expanding and we just keep, pushing out there to new territories and new trade routes and just keep going, then there is no limit. Like, I mean, it could just keep going depending on how much population and how many routes you can keep going. So hundreds, 1,000 years, who knows, right? But you're not limited to the amount of space in your agriculture. You're limited to the amount of ships that you could build and how many trade routes you can get. And then if people wanted to take over trade routes, they could just go and build warships instead of transportation ships, right? And then blow people up and then take their trade routes from them. Ha ha ha. Okay, right? Doesn't that sound simple? It's easy enough. I mean, it's just the way the world works. Yeah. Just like the plumber who comes into business into a town that doesn't have any business available. Well, he has to cut his rates. Well, then you have a plumber out there who's just like, I can't cut my rates. I got all these bills I have to pay. Right? Well, what does he do? Try and create laws to prevent anybody from starting new businesses or something like that. I mean, it's just like there's all kinds of tactics that can come into play to try and, prevent things from happening. It's just like, it's all economic forces that are at play that people are messing with. So. Wow, you guys got it up to 294. Perfect. Well, let's continue it on to an hour. We'll see where we're at. We'll get 5 minutes from an hour, and we'll get you guys to hit the like button some more. See, the more you hit the like button, the more the algorithm spreads it around, gets more people, and we got 454 people watching right now. Thanks for answering my question above, assuming you do. Metal Lesser. Oh, let's go take a look here. Where is Metal Lesser? Here we go. Okay. For UE, just got here. Sorry, have 2 planned home projects needing around $600 lumber. Should I buy now or wait until the start project? Home Depot, okay, or should I order from Lumber Supply, not furniture? Okay, so well, consider this. The difference between 500 per thousand and 470 per thousand really isn't that much. Now, if you want to understand, here's a mathematical equation that might make it a little bit easier for you to understand what's going on down there at the retail end of things when it comes to the futures price. The future, again, is something that's happening out there. It's not what's sitting in the lumberyard today. The price doesn't change what's going on within the lumberyard today. Sometimes it can go off a replacement cost, but for the most part, the lumberyard is stuck at where they're at, right? So now, just because you see the lumber futures drop, it doesn't mean that the lumberyard is ripping you off, because they paid a hell of a lot more for it before the futures came down. So this is part to understand, right? If you want to take advantage of the low prices, you have to be vigilant on where it is that those retailers are at. If there is falling prices, it's because there's not a lot of turnover. If there's not a lot of turnover, guess what? They can't sell that lumber for a cheaper price, because they can't bring in the new cheaper prices if they can't roll over the lumber, right? Here's the problem with it all. So yes, going into the future, it should be a cheaper price for you right now. If you watch the futures and it stays low, which this contract closes in a couple of weeks, if it closes, there's going to be a lot of cheap lumber in the system that needs to find its way to the retail end. How long that takes depends on how much rolling over of lumber that particular yard is doing, right? Same thing with the vendor, the wholesaler up there. This is a very long distribution line, and the cost is not something that is changing as that lumber is moving. I mean, it's fixed into the lumber as it's transporting through the line. Okay, so when we think about it from this fashion, when it comes time to buy lumber, if you look at this simple equation, right? If you take, here, do I have my, okay, I don't. Okay. If you take a lumber futures per thousand price of, say, whatever it is, 470 per thousand, 475, right? What you do is you take a 2x4 8, which is the easiest thing to get a price on. You just call up a lumberyard and say, hey, how much is your standard and better 2x4 8 selling for, right? Because it's probably the most common thing out there. And they're going to give you a price, $3.50, whatever. If you want to know what the futures price of that particular piece of lumber is, right, what it's selling for on the futures contract, what you do is you take the per thousand, right? So if it happens to be 470 per thousand, what you do is you put the decimal at the very front of the number, 0.475, right? 0.475. Now you have to figure out the board footage within that 2x4. Now, if you take 2 times 4 times 96, that's going to tell you how many cubic inches are in that chunk of wood. Divide it by 144. You should come up with 5.33. So again, 2 inches by 4 inches by 96 inches, going to come up with the cubic inches of that particular piece of lumber. Divide that by 144, and you'll come up with your board footage. One board foot is 144 cubic inches, right? 1 inch by 12 inches by 12 inches, however you want to figure that out. So this is the math equation again, right? So you take your per thousand price, point, if it's 1,000 per thousand, then it would be 1.000. If it was 1,200 per thousand, it'd be 1.2000. If it's 400 per thousand, it would be 0.400, right? 475 per thousand, 0.475. Okay, so you guys got that part. 0.475 times 5.33. You'll come up with something around $2.50. Okay. So now you can figure out what it is that it's on the futures price as at. So you can then get an idea, well, there's shipping costs, labor costs, profit that has to be made within this lumber futures price by the time it gets to the retail end. So there's a lot of distribution that still needs to go into this lumber. That's rail cost and trucking cost and forklift and labor and people needing to make a profit off of the sale of it, right? So there's still a lot that goes into this lumber that needs to get to the retail end of it. And so you can imagine there's probably going to be at least another, 25-30% added into that in order to try and make up for all this added that's going into it, because the futures cost is just what the mill is doing, right? There's still a lot more distribution line to go. So that's kind of an easier way to understand. Like once you get it, it's like probably pretty complicated for the first person who's ever heard, somebody who's ever heard that for the first time. They'd be like, what in the world? But that's a really good, easy way to understand what's going on in the futures when it comes down to the retail. Because now you can just call up and just say, hey, how much is your 2x4/8 selling for? Standing and better, you write down the price. That's all you need. And then you can figure out everything else from there. And then just do that like once a week. Like you just call down, on every Friday, just ask how much, have your list of lumber yards and just keep calling them and asking them how much that 2x4 is selling for. And you're probably going to find that it doesn't change much. And it's probably not going to change much because the drop of 500 to 470 really isn't that much on the bottom line of anything. It just changes it by a few pennies, really. And so the lumberyard isn't going to really adjust anything based on that. They're really going to only adjust it once they bring in the new supply of lumber, once they have rotated through all the existing lumber that's in their system, which was purchased at a much higher per thousand price, earlier in the month or weeks or whatever. Buildings built in 1800s are superior to new homes today. Avoid lifestyle creep. Use half any increase in income to pay down debt and add time. It's more of a mindset perspective with 10-year horizon. Older buildings actually had 2x4 lumber. I closed my business and stepped away from the economy, liquidated my merchandise on the black market for cash. I'm not participating for a while. Part of people's problem is they have no community, and that's true. Did I? Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, cruising back down here. More consumption, less production will always cause problems. Oh, absolutely. And that's just the thing. Like you'll for always see it when you even I start listening to stories of history, of how these particular people rose and whatever happened, and I just think about the Cantillon essay. I think about all the things that happened, from the times of long ago and the ideas of what took place when the money started to flow in. Like, just like anybody else, like if all of a sudden I mean, it's all perspective for anybody, but if you had an income of, $2,000 a month, all right, or let's make it more reasonable. If you had because there's some people who make $2,000 a month and that's like an incredibly low income. Let's say you were making like $1,000 a week. There we go. That's probably a little bit more realistic to a lot of people. Say you were making $1,000 a week, and all of a sudden you found the ability that you could get like an extra $10, $20 a week, right? It wouldn't really impact your life that much. You'd be like, hey, that's pretty cool. But if that $10, $20 a week was increasing really slowly, but continually increased until pretty soon you had doubled your income. Like over the course of 2 or 3 years, you all of a sudden realize that this $10, $20 that was coming in had increased a week, had increased to $1,000. So now you got $2,000 coming in every single week, where before you only had $1,000. I guarantee you that if that was happening to your paycheck and it was coming in like that, you would not have noticed. You would have increased your standard of living and you would have accommodated your lifestyle to have eaten up all that extra income. Right? If it was slowly, incrementally, and doing that, and you didn't really notice it happening, it was just kind of like your paycheck just kind of had money going into it, and you didn't even really understand why it was happening. Like you didn't see it happening. If that was the case, you would just adapt to the money coming in and you would spend it, and that's the way it is. Now, if you are already in the mindset of I have a limit to how much and then all the rest of the money will go into this particular direction, which most people don't have that mindset. Like they don't go in and say, okay, here's my bills, here's everything I own, and then everything after that, it goes over to here and I don't pay attention to it anymore. Now, if that was the mindset of most people, that extra money that was coming in would immediately just like enhance their life in the way as far as like savings and stability and investments and all that other stuff. It would just flourish and just do quite well. But most people don't do that. Because they don't do that, their lifestyle would just increase and then they wouldn't even notice it. And then one day it was just like they wake up and they had taken that away. They'd be like, whoa, what's going on? How come all of a sudden I'm like, hurting for cash here? And it was like, well, you never really had it to begin with. We gave it to you and you didn't do anything with it, right? If that was sort of the case. I was like, what do you mean you gave it to me? I thought I earned it. So it's just the mindset. Again, it's human nature. Just understanding like this, the human psychology. Like it's one thing to be disciplined, to say, no, I recognize what's happening here. And although I want to take this off and go and party, I'm not. I'm not going to go party with it. I have to go and do more work. Like, that's essentially it. Like, just think about it like work. You go to work all day, right? And then at the end of the day, you get some money in, and now you got to go to work some more, right? Because now you have to take your money and divide it into the necessities that you have, and then maybe take a little bit of pleasure, right? Because the pleasure is just going to be painful experiences from it anyway, so there's no point in chasing pleasure, right? And then take that money and then be disciplined with it and go and do more work and find a place to put it where it's going to actually return some money back to you. And that's very difficult because it's always work. Everything comes down to hard work. It's building it. Building, right? And most of the time, people are like, no, I did 8 hours. I'm done. Now it's my time. I get to go and blast this all away and chase this pleasure and then experience the pain from it the next morning as I'm hungover and bloated and pissed off. So we are moving up on that 1 hour mark. That is really cool. We're at 338 likes. I love it. You guys are just nailing that like button with 455 people watching right now. 338 likes. Give me 12 likes in the next 2 minutes. We'll stick it around for another 15 minutes. That would take us up to 350 likes in the next minute and a half. And we'll continue on for another 15 minutes or so. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so a condo in SoCal, 650 square feet, 1-bedroom mortgage, 575,000 payment, 50K with HOA. Oh my God. Yeah, right? And that's, yeah, all right, you guys got it to the 350. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. We'll continue on for an hour and to the hour and 15 minute mark. Can people see the comments? Yes, people can see this comment. What's the HOA fee in SoCal? We like thumbs up, guys. All right. Parents should always trump schools, but no one wants to touch that bear. Simon, have you heard anything further regarding laminate prefab building material? That was interesting. Oh, Brody, that is going to be a long road. That's going to be a long road. So if you follow that particular industry, you're going to find that What seems quite exciting and new is not really new. They've been doing this for quite a while. It is growing. It's becoming more popular. You're finding that they are doing projects with this. They are building high. Okay, let me back it up a little bit. Brody's talking about the cross-laminated timber industry. The cross-laminated timber industry is where they are building high-rises or institutions like hospitals or schools or libraries or whatever completely out of wood construction, but not like your typical wood construction where you'd see like 2x4s and plywood and stuff like that. This is all wood construction where they do like laminated glue lam beams, where they'll build entire floor sections like a glue lam beam that comes in and gets set into place. Not only walls, but floors, roof systems. The entire thing is built like a giant glue lam beam with the cutouts and everything already built into it. So literally they show up at site and put into place. They're not cut or fabricated on site. Everything is done at another location and then like literally pieced together. So the idea behind it is, and like, I mean, not that I'm into the green movement or anything like that. I don't, whatever. But it's out there and people are talking about it. And so if you were going to push this green idea, you can lock carbon up into wood by not burning it or letting it rot. So by taking this particular product, you are saying we are locking carbon up in the wood itself within this high-rise building and it will never escape, right? So again, it's like a green product inside of that fashion, even though you're cutting down trees. Okay. So, right? I mean, anyhow, one of the biggest obstacles from this was the idea that it's going to be fire and rot, right? And bugs and all that. Well, they've taken care of all the problems with the rot and bug infestations and stuff like that as far as the way that they treat and assemble these items. It's not susceptible to those two particular issues. And then as far as fire goes, they found that because there is no cavities, there is no open spacing between the walls and the floors of this particular systems, it chars the outside, but it doesn't actually burn through, right? So here it is, another possible like self-fire regulated building material that doesn't necessarily, lend to the dangers that once they had back in the day of having these buildings that had like air gaps and cavities that would then like burn through and then cause these huge fires within these buildings, which again was the problem for most cities. As far as their fire codes, they wouldn't allow wood buildings over a certain height because their fire trucks could only fight fires over a certain height on a building if it was to happen to catch fire. So they wouldn't allow wood construction beyond a certain height. Well, now that they have, changed a lot of the fire codes when it comes to this cross-laminated timber, they are becoming more accessible to a lot of cities out there as far as being able to go over those height restrictions when it came to a wood constructed building. So again, this is like, another possible thing coming into the future. So what I think personally is that this is going to be a very prominent building material going into the future. Concrete is, it's carbon intrusive, it's noisy, it's intrusive on the neighborhoods, where the cross-laminated timber industry doesn't face those same issues. And now when I think about like assembly when it comes to the job site, the cross-laminated timber industry doesn't require as much labor when it comes to like a crane and a handful of people to like literally place these things into the spot that they are and fasten them however they get fastened. But it doesn't require a lot of people to do that because you're not fabricating on site. Again, you're fabricating in some factory someplace else and then shipping these pieces. They can do it to residential buildings, like big institutional buildings, schools or whatever. There is no real limitation to what type of building that could be done with this. Really, I think the limitation is probably the distance that it takes from the place that they actually build these cross-laminated timber to where they actually go for the construction site. So if you're in a far off remote location, then it may not be like the best option as far as like a residential house goes. The cost may be expensive and may be too far to travel. There may be issues of something of that kind of nature. But when it comes to like a big industrial building, like do an apartment complex or something, a steady flow of material, even from a distance, even on a train or a truck or something like that, can be done even from a remote distance, even if it was, like literally hundreds or if not 1,000 miles away, a steady flow on a train or truck, and having that kind of continuous flow from the factory to the job site, I think can happen and probably be an adequate form of distribution even today in the way it's going. It just has to become more of a popular item to in order to facilitate a bigger industry within it. But it's happening. I mean, just look it up. I mean, cross laminated timber is happening right now. Um, will it actually impact housing? I don't know, not yet. Like, I don't think that part of the industry is to fruition yet. I think down the road it will happen. So, really, if you're looking for a place to invest or something, then I think this is like the ground floor because nobody's really heard of it, right? I mean, I've talked about it for years, but it's like because I'm in the building industry, so I see it, I know it, I know what it is. Like, I don't deal with it myself because it's not something that a lumberyard would deal with. This is something that, is directly with these manufacturers of the cross laminated timber, and then probably the builder themselves, who's ever constructing it. So again, it takes me out, right? Like right out of it. But then, you look for things like, it's a good idea if they can potentially take your job, they're doing it. It's a good thing. It really is, right? That's advancements. That's like, that's change. That's technology. Whatever is coming. If it can potentially take your job, then that's probably a good. It's probably gonna happen. I mean, so, and this is one of them. Like, I look for things that might do that, and this is one. So I would not try to deny it or look away from it or pretend that it doesn't exist. Instead, I would rather invest into that if it is going to take my job, because then I would have some sort of return on the investment if they are going to take it away from me. So, anyway, hope that answers the question. Rumocum? Ramakam? I like the name. Sorry if I'm messing it up. $10. Thank you so much for the super chat. Very generous of you. Finally catching a live stream. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support on with the $10. That's very generous of you. And it's very generous of everybody who has been sending me super chats and the PayPals and everything that you have done to support the Uneducated Economist. One of the biggest things that you can do right now is just hitting that like button. By hitting that like button, the algorithm will pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in, and by making the videos more popular, I get more subscribers and more viewers and more ad revenue. Another way you can support the channel is becoming a member of the channel. It's $1 a month. By joining the channel, you get access to the member-only videos where I break down monetary speeches, and we have a discussion with a smaller group of people that makes the understanding of what it was that was being discussed within that speech a lot easier to internalize, and therefore we can use that information more in our own personal economy, because we know it's our own economy and not everybody else's out there, but our decisions to make about what it is that we need for ourselves. And that's the way to do it. Yeah, it's not much different from the regular videos other than getting access to those particular member only live streams. But to me, that is very deep, in depth, harder to understand information that needs to be discussed within a smaller group that isn't necessarily like something that is going to be available as far as information that's able to be retained by just the average person. And I'm not trying to knock anybody's intelligence or anything else out there like that. But when you're talking, neutral unemployment rate and how that's going to impact monetary policy as according to the neutral interest rate and the Fed funds rate not being an effective tool for stimulating the economy, but it's more about the words and how those words impact all those interest rates. It's not necessarily something that is like, hey, everybody, why don't you join in on this live stream and have a discussion? It's really like, that is pretty deep discussion stuff that I would love for people to join in on. But if you want to join in on it, it's going to cost you $1, right? $1. $1 a month, $12 a year, $120 for a decade of deep information that I have been breaking down, having a discussion about and sharing with people. And I'm looking to try and get that membership up to about 10,000 people. If I can get it up to 10,000 people, I can give up my W-2 and pursue this on a more full-time, real, real thing, like where I actually go around and do discussions and try and sell books and courses and stuff like that. So, all right. Okay. Renters lose rent every month. Yeah, but they also don't have liability, right? They only have assets. And so which one are you going to be in? Um, Miss Kimmy's calling. I'll have to call her back. You guys remember Kimmy? Kimmy from some of the interviews I was doing. She has her own business in photography. Was working a 9 to 5 grind and found a passion in photography and was able to build a business that got her able to leave her W-2 and pursue photography as a full-time gig. It's a great interview. She's a great person, and I was making contact with her to see if she wanted to get together for the 4th of July, but I think she's busy doing other things. Anyway. Thanks. Yes, hit the like, please. Yes, please do. We are 5 minutes away from the hour and 15-minute mark with 399 likes and 406 people watching. That is incredible. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. I don't even know how much to ask for now. I can't believe there would be anybody out there who hasn't hit that like button yet. But if we can get it up to, say, 425 in the next 5 minutes here, we'll continue on, take it to an hour and a half. So we're at 403. We'll take it to 425. There we go. We're at 407. Nice. All right, my landlord is broke. He brings my DoorDash. I know a few people who own a couple of businesses that are outside of their own business that they are conducting. And I mean, I'm not saying that they're broke. I wouldn't say that by any means, but they're not killing it out there, right? They're not killing it, and they own quite a bit. They own rental properties, they own like fishing business, they own construction business, right? And it's like they're doing okay. Like, they got, like, they're making ends meet, they're doing their thing. They got, food on the table and cars to drive, but it's not like they're out there like, just like, woohoo, man, we're just in the money. No, it's not like that at all, okay? And so everything is a struggle. Everything is costly. Everything is a price to pay. And it's not a matter of how much you're making. Again, I think we've talked about this before. It's not a matter of how much you make. It's how much you can save. It's literally how much you can save is everything. Oh, they're opening the garage. All right. A lot of people done, but not enough people know how to do it. A lot of work to be done, but not a lot of people know how to do it. Yeah, that's for sure. I agree with that. What's going on here, I think? Let's see here. There we go. All right. Brody, Simon, it's the business not doing great phenomenon, a consequence of the high rate environment. Well, I mean, yeah, everything comes down to the chain in which it comes down. This is the reason why there's such a lag in the economy, is because it's not everybody kind of want to looks at like the interest rates. Oh, hey, by the way, I got my "In the Fed" hat on. I'll wear that backwards for you guys. Um, it's it's not a matter of like the consumer necessarily when it comes to the interest rates. Although a lot of I can't wear it backwards; it's too uncomfortable. Okay. It's more about what happens. This is why the lag takes place within the Fed funds rate from the time that they raise rates to the time that it actually impacts the economy, is because it's not a matter of the interest rates putting a burden on the consumer, which it does, right? Which does put like, the impression upon business, hey, we don't have a consumer out here. But really what is happening is that when they raise interest rates, what that does is it puts a downward pressure on business investment, right? So now the businesses don't necessarily want to invest in new buildings, equipment, or hiring people. And if they're not hiring people, then that's putting downward pressure on the labor force. So then unemployment begins to rise, right? When you put this unemployment rising, then you have less people who are earning money and less people consuming, and then less consumption then starts bringing down inflation, right? Same thing on the opposite, right? When they lower interest rates, this sparks business investment. They start buying equipment and buildings and labor, right? Start hiring people. Once you start hiring people, then you start putting pressure on consumption because more people are working, more people are consuming. And when more people are consuming, then you got supply demand imbalances begin to take place, and then you have the inflationary pressures. So this is the typical way to understand how it is that the Federal Reserve would be looking at interest rate adjustments to the economy. And this is why there's such a lag from the time that they adjust interest rates to the time that it actually impacts the economy. Now, granted, yes, the consumer is involved in that with the interest rates and the purchasing of houses and cars and going on vacation. So there's a couple of factors to look at, but ultimately it's the investment into business that is taking place or not taking place, depending on which way we're going with it, that is the stimulation or the restriction to the economy that is really happening out there. So it's better to understand it from that form, because then it becomes a lot easier. Shut up. She's out there running the blower. So it's easier to understand it from that fashion and to understand where it is that, like, the Federal Reserve is trying to position the economy when it comes to the interest rate adjustments going into the future. None of it matters anymore, remember, because the interest rate adjustments don't do anything. It's the perception of it, right? So we have to, like, not necessarily stress about where the interest rates are or what they're doing, because that isn't really the issue. It is, but it's the idea of what that's going to be, right? So right now they're not doing anything. Like, the Federal Reserve has sat on their hands, but go and look at mortgage rates are coming down. Huh? Like, why? Why would they come down? That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, the mortgages shouldn't change any unless the interest rates change, but the mortgages act independently of the Federal Reserve and the Fed funds rate. They work off of perception. Think about it. When the Fed said that they were going to be raising rates going into the future and they're going to be doing it by a significant amount, the mortgage rate shot up instantly. Bang! Right? Like, they shot right up, but they didn't keep lockstep with the Federal Reserve. As the rates were moving up, the Fed rates were moving up, the mortgage rates were pretty much standing still, right? As the Fed was moving, because the rates had just did their thing. They were like, they were pissed. They're like, boom, here we are. Well, why did they stop there? It's because the mortgages are a bond market in itself. See, people have to understand that the mortgages are a bond market within itself. There is fixed income investors out there who are looking at those mortgage bonds saying, that's it, that's my price. They have fallen enough and the yield is right there, man, I'm in it. And they found their price, man. They were like, yeah, I mean, you could say that they're going to go to 15%, but they're not, because I'm buying, right? I'm buying now, right? As an investor, not me personally, but the mortgage investors out there who are looking for fixed income in the mortgage market, they would find it there at that price and they bought in. And so that's why they didn't keep going up, the interest rates, right? They stalled out because the mortgage investors were out there buying those mortgages at that price because they were looking for a fixed income and they weren't going to allow the interest rates to go any more than that. Once they got to that price, they bought in, and boom, that was it. They weren't going to go any further than that, no matter how much the Federal Reserve continued to raise rates. And that was so funny to watch, because now the thought of raising or lowering rates going into the future is putting downward pressure on the mortgage market, on the mortgages out there. The Fed hasn't done anything, right? And this is something that I have described so many times. I've tried to tell people, like, you got to watch out for this. This is the credible threat. The Fed they may not, they don't know, nobody cares, like, everybody cares, right? But what nobody knows, right, is that the idea that the interest rates going into the future being a cut is the monetary policy, not the cutting itself, right? It will do some to the economy, but what has more impact is the belief of it. The action of the people, the market itself, with the anticipation that there will be a rate cut going into the future, is the monetary policy, not the rate cut itself, right? The belief and the understanding of it is. And that's really, like, if you go and you read their comments and everything, they have found and discovered that they realized that if they gave forward guidance on their rate cut, that they could get more out of the rate cut And so the more forward guidance they gave about the rate cut, the more they found that it would impact the rate cut. And so they started talking even more about their monetary policy, whether it was a rate cut or a rate increase, because it would have so much more profound impact on it. Then they realized that they just talked about it, it had more impact than the actual cutting of it. And it was like, wow, we could just talk about this stuff and have more of an impact than the actual rate cut. Right? They literally discovered that. They set up all these communications over the last, since about 2012 and a little bit earlier than that. Right? Really, it goes like the way they set this up was really going back much further. But really, they ramped it up in 2012. And they said, hey, we need to come up with a way of communicating this stuff to the people so that they understand it in a way that we can conduct our monetary policy. And we come up with the statement on economic projections, the summary or whatever it is on economic projections. We got the plot, the dot plot. We got, all these Fed officials who can come out within the mainstream media and do like interviews and town hall meetings and all kinds of stuff. They talk about all these tools for communication because it works so much better than actually cutting rates. Yeah. And that's the tools. Like, I mean, you can actually see it within it. This is one of the things that if you follow my channel and join the membership, these are some of the things that we discuss is the monetary policies of communication being the effective tool for the Federal Reserve and how they did this. Right? We discuss it in these videos. Yeah. All right, 438 people have hit that like button with 433 people watching. I love it when I have more likes than I have people watching. It makes the algorithm go nuts. All right, Metal Sear, thank you so much for the $5. Nothing against unions, but on-site custom build is archaic. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure, but yeah, I guess it is. Thank you very much for the $5. All right. I love all this analysis, but what we are failing to analyze is the fact that our currency is doubling every 4 years. Can you handle another 100% inflation over the next 4 years? Yes, I can. Yes, deplorable, I can, because I understand what it is that's happening here, and I understand that the money is not something that I am expecting to hold value. It's not something that it's a currency. It's meant to take my efforts, my services, my production, whatever it is I got for sale right now, it's meant to carry that over to other productions and services. But what it is not meant to do is hold value. Anybody who wishes it, wants it to, believes it should, is wrong. It's not. I mean, even if they wanted it to, even if we wished it for it to, even if it doesn't do it that way. And anybody who's trying to say that it should is wrong. Right? And because it might very well should. If it should, then it should be silver or gold or Bitcoin or something of that nature, something that doesn't have an elastic money supply to it. It's not meant to carry a purchasing power going into the future. It wasn't meant to do that, right? I mean, I'm sure it's meant to by our logic, right? By our desires, by our wishes, we want it to, but that's not what it does, right? The only thing it does is it trades our time, our efforts, our production, and the other time, effort, and production. And we have to do it quickly, right? If you don't have a place to go with it, then you're going to lose the purchasing power of it over time, right? Now, you can be strategic and say, I'm going to hold on to it because I believe that there is a buying opportunity going into the future where I can make use of holding on to these dollars for that particular moment going into the future. But if you expected to hold on to it for time, like a serious amount of time, then it's delusional. It's not going to work. It's going to fail. And it's better to understand it for that than it is to try and say, hey, we need to do something about that. What you do is you transfer it into gold and silver and Bitcoin or stocks and bonds and houses and real estate or something other than a dollar, right? That's what you do. That's how you do it. And that's what this channel talks about, right? And most economists talk about. But as far as like trying to get it to retain a purchasing power, it doesn't work like that. It's not going to. Right? It's going to fail miserably. Did I get some other ones down here? Let me go look. It seemed like I had another super chat or something that I missed. Isn't it? Oh, here we go. Yeah. Um, construction unions resisted factory fabricated homes. Yeah, and I could see why. Like, I mean, especially when it comes to like modular homes or trailer park homes, stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, where are we at? Here at the bottom. All right. Money buys freedom until it runs out, then we will spill our blood. Can you explain how a depression in the U.S. is the only way for BRICS to gain a foothold as the world's currency? Yeah. Hey, mamas. You want to say hi to the people? Are you working? Surprise visit from Dishes.
Hi, people.
The only time they ever actually get to hear your voice. They're going to hear me talk about how the BRICS nations need a depression in the United States in order to exist.
It's fascinating.
It's a fascinating. She loves that. All right, here we go. So this is a big one because a lot of people find that they find articles or they hear about how the BRICS nations are going to be taking over as the next world reserve currency. And as far as taking over, that means like kind of like taking the dollar's role. Like the dollar is just going to exist and the BRICS are going to make it like irrelevant. And somehow this is kind of like the idea out there, and like maybe the possibilities of introduction of like a gold backed BRICS currency to trade commodities in. And there's a lot of evidence out there about how like they control the world's commodities and all these transactions that are done within the BRICS nations themselves. The idea of them using their own sovereign currency, anything that they can do to try and avoid the use of the dollar as far as, doing their transactions go. Now, this is kind of like the typical idea of it. The only way that the BRICS nations can have their own world reserve currency that is going to be superior to the dollar, in which that the dollar is irrelevant or just doesn't work anymore for them or for the world, is if the dollar was to completely collapse. And that means a complete devastation of the financial system as we know it within the United States. No more Federal Reserve, no more government. It'd have to disappear, like the United States financial system. Okay, why would it have to go down like that? It's because one, let's start with gold, right? Let's start with the gold, and that the gold could not be used as a world reserve currency, especially for doing transactions between nations, because the same thing is going to happen that's happened time and time and time and time again, right? And it's explained very well in Cantillon's essay, right? And that is the most industrious nation, the most industrious people out there will hoard all the gold for themselves. This will deny the rest of the world the ability to do transactions, and they will fall into their own depressions because of the lack of available money to do transactions with, right? Now, I've heard a lot of people say, no, they can just lower the price to do transactions. You can't, right? If I buy a TV that I intend to sell for $100, I cannot constantly drop the price of that TV because I paid $100 for it, right? You see, so like trying to do commerce, trying to do business, trying to do anything in a deflationary environment becomes very, very difficult, right? Try and have wages, either you don't work or you take a lesser wage, right? It's very difficult, right? So deflationary currencies are not something that are long lasting in a stable way. What ends up happening is you have a concentration of wealth and then a redistribution of that wealth, right? Business cycles end up taking place from it. I'm cool with it. Like, I'm ready to do it. But most people aren't. They want the elastic money supply. They want stability in their lives. They want, governments to be able to interject and do something, right? And that's really where the fiat currencies come in. Now, the United States was able to conduct themselves in a way that had people convinced that the dollar itself was as good as gold, even though it was a fiat currency running alongside of gold, right? So as everybody really truly wanted to use gold for their currency, they really were using dollars because they thought of dollars like they were gold. Like if you had a certain amount of dollars, you can get a fixed amount of gold. And so as long as you saw it that way, some people probably didn't, but most people did. They were like, hell, as long as I'm using dollars, I'm using gold, right? So now dollars was facilitating the trade, and there was a hell of a lot more dollars out there than there was gold. But people loved it because they could do all this trade, they could do all these transactions, and everybody was working really hard. Problem came is when they realized that there wasn't enough dollars, or it wasn't enough gold for all the dollars that existed. And this is when the whole system started to collapse. So we already know that gold isn't going to work, right? For a fiat or for a world reserve currency when it's competing against the capabilities of what fiat can do for transactions. Like you just can't compare. You can do as many transactions, unlimited amount of transactions with fiat currency, but you are limited on the amount of transactions you can do with gold. All right, so now the United States has provided the ability for everybody around the world to do just about as many transactions as they want. How? Why? All right, well, they did it by issuing out all the U.S. treasuries. This is how. All right, by issuing out all those U.S. treasuries, they were able to go into as much debt as they want, which then gave them the ability to produce as many dollars as they want. All right, so now you have an elastic money supply that you can provide as much dollars to the world as they need in order to do all the transactions that they want. And that's not something that was easy to do. It actually took a convincing of the world to believe that the United States is actually going to be paying those debts back. So those treasuries, those U.S. bonds that come from the United States government that everybody hates, is a safe and liquid asset that is unlike anything else that anybody has out there. So with a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury that's unlike anything else that anybody has, the United States has this ability to go into massive amounts of debt in order to provide the world with the safe and liquid asset of the U.S. Treasury. No nation is wanting to do that because all the BRICS nations want to be producers. None of them want to be debtors, right? So if you were a debtor, then you might be able to issue out U.S. type treasuries, or BRICS type treasuries, or whatever it is. But none of them want to be a debtor. They all want to be producers. Only the United States is the debtor. And not to mention that every other nation out there wants to sell stuff. What does the United States do? It buys stuff. What does it do when it's buying stuff? It buys stuff and exports dollars. That's how it gets the money out there to the rest of the world. Now, none of those BRICS nations want to do that. None of them want to be debtors, and none of them want to be in a trade deficit, right? This is something that they would have to do in order to compete against what the United States is doing. It just doesn't exist. It's like it doesn't even exist. People are saying this is going to happen. This is going to go over. And I'm like, okay, show it to me. Show me where that BRICS nation is going to do something like that. Going to provide the world with a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury and then do trade deficit to the extent that the United States has done. Name any nation who is even remotely coming close to discussing that kind of possibility. None. Zero. All right? Nobody doing it. You look to second place against the dollar, there isn't one. It's complete fabricated stories, right? Now, I'm not saying it's not happening. They are doing trade, right? But you think about what it is that the United States dollar is doing against how much trade that they're doing in their own sovereign currency, and it's an infinite little tiny amount. Give it time. There will come a moment in the future, right, in which the dollar will fail. It will no longer work. What that looks like, how far out into the future, is anybody's guess, but this ain't it. It ain't from the BRICS nation. If you really want to take the dollar out, what it's going to take is going to take a complete failure of the dollar, meaning a lack of trust, confidence in it whatsoever. Everybody's saying, I'm done, I'm out, right? Not going deeper into debt, not issuing out bonds that are due in U.S. dollars like Brazil is doing, like Turkey is doing, like all the rest of these nations out there who all want to take out the best debt that they possibly can, and it's going to be done in U.S. dollars. See, the dollar-denominated debt that exists out there in the world is far, far bigger than what anybody ever could possibly imagine. It's like, it's hard to even fathom. Like, if two people do deals with each other and they write a contract in U.S. dollars, does anybody know that? Like, how many people are going to know about that? That's a debt that's due in dollars. That's a demand for dollars outside of the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with the United States. Not anything to do with governments or banking system or corporations. Nothing. Not our people. Right? But this is all due in U.S. dollars. See, I'm not scared of the BRICS. It's to me, the whole BRICS and the idea of it is actually a bit of a pressure relief for the Federal Reserve to not have to produce as much money as they need to in order to provide it to the world. It's actually like, oh, finally, somebody else out there trying to provide some ability to do transactions besides us. Right? Because the United States is on an unsustainable debt path. We cannot keep printing up money and buying these U.S. treasuries to provide the world with the dollars that they are looking for because of all these stupid contracts that they had written in dollars. Right? That's why I just don't see it I cannot see, I can see a financial system collapse and there's something else coming in. But I don't see the collapse, and I don't see anything that could even come close to competing with the dollar. Not even. Not even close. Moving on. God, look at all these comments. Okay, where are we at? We're at 135 with 487. You guys are just tearing that like button up. I love it. We'll stick it out for another 10 minutes. If you can get it to 500, you get it to 500 likes in the next 10 minutes here, we'll carry it on to 2 hours. With 457 people watching, that's only 12. You only need 12 people to go hit that like button. And we'll continue it on. All right. Could UBI stave off a depression, even if only for a short time? Well, sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you give a bunch of people money and tell them to go spend it, and they start consuming, and then it's just like all of a sudden depression doesn't seem to exist. But it's just a flash in the pan. It'll only be short-lived, right? Again, you have to think about where you are in the 7-step process, right? Rise, the industrious people, right? Meaning that they're not industrious, they become industrious. They were poor, now they're figuring it out, right? They were stupid, now they're smart, whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, it was just like, you got to have whether you're 18 trying to figure it out and you're trying to get your stuff together, you become industrious, right? You become useful in some way. The industriousness of the people, right, that move into production and savings. That's the issue, right? So you produce, you're industrious, you produce and save, and then what happens, right? That standard of living. And that's really where it comes down to, is that standard of living that that increases your spending, that starts moving in the foreign production. However you want to try and continue on when you start moving into luxuries and raising that standard of living or maintaining that standard of living will always result in the same thing, right? Like, once you start raising your standard of living, you will start bringing in foreign production. It's just the way it goes. And there's no stop. Like, you can carry it on for as long as you want. You can say, oh, no, UBI, and we can extract from these people, but you're not producing, right? Producers, savers, increase your standard of living, right? Move into foreign production. All those luxuries drives out domestic manufacturing. It's the system in which it goes in. Now, if you start bringing in UBI, you're going to start finding people moving into luxuries. You find the separation between the rich and the poor grow, and all the problems get worse, and people are wondering, damn, I thought this was going to fix it. All right, but it doesn't, because you can't stop the economic forces. We should go through a collapse. That's what needs to happen. Like, if you want to fix things, what you have to do is you have to not consume. That means you don't get UBI, right? It means nobody gets UBI. Not the rich, when they, too big to fail, no. Too big should fail. That's what it should say, right? You're too big, you should fail. Right? But too big to fail means that there's government bailouts for it. That shouldn't happen either. And now we have to go through this effort of actually producing and saving and not consuming. Weird, right? We produce and save and pay off debt. Produce and save and pay off debt for generations of people to do this for a while, in order to try and establish a way that we can have a single income pay for a household again. We need to go back to being a producer saver that can compete against the rest of the world. It doesn't work. We can't. can't, you know? I mean, there's no, like, that's why I don't understand for a lot of people who are studying economics or even listen to other economists out there, they are constantly looking for or anticipating a fix. Like, there's no fixing this system. There's none. You have to be able to participate within it the way it is, not one that's going to be different or should be different. You know? Jesus, you guys are tearing that like button up. All right, so I don't even know what I said to get it to. I know you guys blasted right past it, so let's go. Let's do it here. I live in a shipping container. Oh, that's cool. Actually, I have a couple of shipping containers myself. I should turn them into living space. All right. We will become non-consumers. That will be very dangerous for the United States. We are a consuming nation. We have to consume. We will become non-consumer. We already read that. All right. So what happens when BRICS completes and shuts us out completely? They can't. Like, I don't understand how it is that you say completes. What does that mean? Like, what does completes mean? They don't have any ability to do transactions, right? I don't care if they're setting up some sort of digital network to do it. They don't have a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury. It doesn't exist. So there's nothing they don't like. There's what happens when they complete what happens when they come up with this imaginary scenario that comes into the future. Like, that's what you're basically asking, you know. It doesn't exist. There is no conceptual ability for them to actually take over the United States without providing the world with the safe and liquid asset of U.S. Treasury and the dollars themselves, a currency. No, there's no nation out there that's doing that. They don't even come close. There's no possibility. Bitcoin can't do it. Gold can't do it. I don't care what cryptocurrency that you say has all this really super high speed transactions to it. It can't do it either, right? None of that stuff is providing the ability to do the transactions around the world like the US dollar is doing. No other nation out there is providing a safe and liquid asset like the US Treasury. No other nation out there is willing to go into deep debt or into deficit trading as much as the United States in order to provide the world with the dollars in order to in order to facilitate all the transactions. No nation does it. There's like to believe that there is going to be a time going into the future here or even remotely close to the near future that says that's going to be different is again delusional. It doesn't exist. It's just not there. It's complete imagination. And although it's based in a lot of good logic, it's still completely imaginary. It doesn't exist. Go and show me second place, and then we'll go talk about it. Second place is such a far off, distant thing that it doesn't even compete. It doesn't even exist. It's like irrelevant, right? And it's better to understand it from that fashion because then you don't have to waste your time on thinking, oh my God, when's the dollar going to die? It's not, right? The way the dollar dies is through Gresham's law. Right, and understand how Gresham's law works, and then you'll understand that the dollar needs a competitor that is trading symbiotically with it. That's how the dollar was able to take out gold. It's because people thought if they had a certain amount of dollars, they would have a certain amount of gold that was it was taken for granted. Right? People just believed it. Now, some people probably didn't, but most people did. Right? They were like, if you have this much dollars, you will get this much gold. Period. Right? Depending on what area, whether it was $22 or $35 or whatever. Right? But this is what people believed. And now, in order for that to happen again, you can't come in and say, hey, I'm going to introduce this bad currency into the system. Right? Because nobody's going to accept a bad currency. And now you can't introduce a good currency in either because people would take a good currency and just hoard it for themselves. So introducing a bad currency, hey, I got this bad currency, you want to use it? People are like, oh, go piss off, man. I'm going to use this dollar, right? Nobody wants to use a bad currency. And then somebody says, oh, I'm sorry, I got good currency. Here, let me bring you this good currency. And be like, yeah, yoink, right out of circulation it goes. Right? Gresham's law does not allow for this to take place. Right? So in order for the dollar to lose its status, you have to have something come in that is trading symbiotically with it. It's like, hey, I got this. Hey, that's just as good as a dollar is. These two, interchangeable. Doesn't matter. There's no difference between them. Kind of like the way dollars were with gold and gold was with dollars. Dollars need to be that with what? Stable coins. You put stable coins there with the dollar. Now you got a stable coin. It trades just like a dollar. It's being backed by treasuries. Stable coins are. All right? Treasuries and dollars and cash. So now here you have something that trades just the same as a dollar does. It's not a dollar. It facilitates trade like a dollar. Right? It'll do the exact same. People believe it's a dollar. Right? And now everybody's out there using these stable coins as if they're dollars. Meanwhile, dollars are fading away, less of them in circulation. And then who's to say these stable coins are actually backed by dollars? Right? See, that's how you get a new currency into the system. You don't go and force your way in by saying, hey, we're going to knock this guy off of his pedestal. It doesn't work like that. Go for it. Good luck. All right? Meanwhile, China has dollar-denominated debt. Brazil has dollar-denominated debt. Turkey does dollar-denominated debt. These are all nations that have to come up with dollars in order to pay back their debts. You wonder why it is that they're dumping treasuries? What's the fastest way to get into cash? Sell treasuries. Why do they need cash? To pay back their dollar-denominated debts. That's what's going on around here. Right? People don't want to tell it like that because they want to tell the story about how the dollar is on its last leg. It's on its way out. It's going to fail, and then you'll go and buy all their gold. Right? Now, don't get me wrong. I think you should load up on gold. I mean, I believe that. Right? Have as much gold on hand as you can get your hands on. But that's like all this stuff about BRICS is going to take over and dollar's going to fail and all this other stuff. It's delusional. Just completely like imaginary. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever if you can understand Gresham's law, Triffin's dilemma, Cantillon effect. Like, you put these things together and it is like, that can't happen. It can't happen like that. You know? Not going to go back to a gold standard. Bitcoin is not going to be a world reserve currency. They just don't, it ain't going to work. Because the most industrious people will hoard it, and there will not be enough left over to do the transactions that everybody else wants to do, and they will fall into depression. It's just the way it goes. All right. Wow, look at all these comments. You guys are just tearing it up. I love it. All right. All those countries you mentioned have decreased the treasury holdings. Look it up. 2 holders of U.S. Department of JPN and China. I know, and I just explained why. I just explained why they are dumping those treasuries. This is not the first time they have dumped treasuries. Think about it. Right now, the Federal Reserve is in a quantitative tightening position where they are pulling money out of the system. These people have dollar-denominated debts that if they do not pay those things, their credit rating starts to fail. They start suffering an even more deflationary effects that they are already facing. How is it that they come up with their dollars if they can't sell the merchandise? They need to sell stuff in order to get the dollars to pay back their debts. They can't do it. They have to dump treasuries. They're selling treasuries at a loss. Does that make sense? Hell no, it doesn't make sense unless you have to do it. And they have to do it, and that's why they're doing it right now. See, this is why King Dollar is coming to destroy the world, is destroying all these nations out there. The more that the dollar tightens up and these nations go like, oh, I can't take it anymore, I gotta ease, the King Dollar just comes in and just smashes them. Bam! Take it again, sucker. Right? Because there's nothing else that they can do. The dollar is not something that can be taken off of its pedestal. You have to let it fail on its own, or have something else that is going to trade, that is going to be a symbiotic relationship with it. That's the only way you can do it. And the failure is not, it's inevitable, but it's not in sight. Like, I don't see it. What I see is massive separation between the rich and the poor, and a bunch of people complaining about it and not doing anything about it, right? Not recognizing it for what it is. That's what I see going on out there. Every time I see these politicians step up saying, we can do something about this, and we're going to do all these trades and blah, 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 and I'm thinking, you're lying. You're lying, dude. Either you're lying or you're dumb, right? You're delusional, or just don't get it. But there's nothing like that. You can't fix this, and to come in and say, I can fix this, like, no, you can't. Don't even pretend that you say you can. It's not possible, right? It's easier to understand that it's not possible to fix, and that there is other ways that we can go about it so that we can have the best position for ourselves, so that we can have the best outcome for ourselves, right? That's it. Larry Bird. All right, UE, you are the man, bro. Well, thank you very much, bro. I appreciate the 4.99. I appreciate everybody hitting that like button. We are coming up on the 2 hour mark. We got 10 minutes here before we hit 2 hours with 544 likes with 423 people watching. That's it, man. I think we have like topped out on our liking. But let's see what we can do. If you can get it to like, let's say 575, that's a bunch, right? So that's like 28 likes, 29 likes from here. If you can get it to 575 in the next 10 minutes, we'll carry it on beyond the 2 hours. Otherwise, we'll call it end. Stupid people down in their own bullshit. It happens, and this is the thing, like, it sucks when you find yourself in a position in which that you're like just desperate. It's just like, man, there's no hope, there's no attempt, there's no trying, there's like, why am I even doing this anymore? I'm just like frustrated with it all. And when you're in that position, it's like, you get hope that there's something that can happen, right? And so you get high on hopium. And you're thinking, okay, man, this guy is going to come in here and he's going to make things different so that I can actually find my way, because I haven't been able to find my way this whole time. And this guy is going to do it because I'm hopeful, right? And now I get it, right? Like, there was times in my life I was hopeful too. And you always got to have like at least some sort of belief that you are going to do better at something in your life, or that this isn't going to be the way it is, and that there is change possible, right? But you have to understand that there's nobody out there that can do it. It's only you. There's nobody coming, period, right? Napoleon Hill. Think rich and think and grow rich. There's nobody coming. That's it. Just you. And you are it. And there's like, to believe that, there's going to be this external force that comes in that's just going to make it better for everybody is just like not going to happen. Right? And so once you accept it, once you understand it for that fashion, then it's just like, okay, I don't care about this politics being something that's going to change my life. It doesn't, right? It doesn't do any of that sort. You can make it change your life. You can condition yourself so it changes your life, or that it impacts your life, or you can condition yourself so it doesn't. And by simply not making it relevant in your life, it doesn't mean anything, right? You don't have any hopes or expectations or belief that it's going to change your life any. Only you can do that. All right, Napoleon Hill was a scam artist. Whatever, man. I learned a lot listening to that book. Right? I learned a lot from that. And whether he was a scam artist or what, I mean, a lot of people can call anybody a scam artist. Can call me a scam artist, right? I mean, it's just like, it's not a matter, it's a matter of what it is that you give the meaning to it as, right? Like, you could listen to that book and say, hey man, this guy or whatever, he was just like a total jerk and whatever. But then you could take the nuggets of information from it that were real gold and say, hey, I actually got something out of this. I will believe there will be a tipping point. Wish I got here sooner. Yeah, you can always go back and listen to it again. All right. He plagiarized this shit pretty much. Oh, whatever. I mean, even compiling information from other people, like, I think about it. Somebody once told me, and they were like, dude, you just get your shit from other people. And I'm like, yeah, that's where data comes from. Like, I can't imagine data into existence. It has to come from other people. That's where data comes from, right? I mean, it was just like, I thought that was one of the weirdest statements somebody had ever said to me. It was just like, you get your information from other people. It was like, of course I do. Like, where else am I supposed to get it? From space? I mean, you know. Uh, cool. We got it up to 577 likes. Let's do it. Let's take it on to, you're supposed to do it by the 2 hour mark. So, geez, man, you guys knocked it out early. Okay. Church ended early today since we didn't have a preacher, so I'm here to hear Simon preach. Yeah, the Sunday preaching. Does Japan do an Argentina Zimbabwe soon? I don't think so. You know, it was something interesting. Somebody was like talking about the negative interest rates in Japan. They were like, didn't Japan have negative interest rates for a bunch of years and stuff like that? And I was like, yeah. And their economy didn't do all that great. It was in a stagflationary, disinflationary, but couldn't find inflation anywhere with this negative interest rate because low interest rates really are a deflationary pressure on the economy. But something that also occurred to me, you think about it, Japan is one of the most cash prevalent countries out there. Like literally paper currency is used quite a bit within that nation. And I thought about it and I was just like, wow, I wonder if that correlates with the negative interest rates. Like people just simply don't want, like if you hold cash, then at least you don't have a negative rate attached to it. And maybe it might not be necessarily attached to the bank account, but just the stigma of negative rates being in the financial system or within the banking system itself might lend one to believe like, hey, I don't want to have my money participated in any of that. And so cash ends up being the preferred choice of doing commerce, which ends up being, you know, very much the case in a lot of parts of Japan. So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting one, and I do wonder if that correlates. Even if you pay off your mortgage, you're still paying rent to the real owner, the government, in the form of property taxes. Yeah. Telling someone just to hoard gold is not a solution. It just makes this greedy wheel go round. It doesn't. Okay. But you do understand that greed is a natural human thing, right? Like being greedy is naturally human to do, right? Being greedy, being, you know, all this stuff, being like desire to have awesome things, like, you know, have cool cars and fancy clothes or whatever it is. Like this is all human instinct. And to like, you know, look down upon it and say like, ah, look at this like horrible human for being instinctually human. Like I don't get it. Like I don't get that part, right? And now I understand for somebody else out there, they might have the opinion to say, no, we don't have to be that way. We can be disciplined and make a conscious choice to not be greedy and to not do these things. And I get it. Like, you know, I mean, hey, let's all hold hands and sit around the campfire and sing kumbaya. It doesn't work. It doesn't exist like that because human nature says that one person out there says, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna be greedy. And I'm gonna go for it and I'm gonna take it all. All right. And then they ruin it for the rest of everybody else who wants to sit around the campfire singing kumbaya. It just doesn't work. Right. So it's better to understand that this is more survival of the fittest and laws of laws of wild, calls, you know, laws of nature. Right. And that's really what it comes down to. You know, it's nothing that government can do. It's nothing that there's some external force is going to come in and try and fix or solve. It's only you and the way you position yourself for it. Homeowners aren't the owners. They think they are. Banks laughing all the way. Yeah, I mean, I think that's also kind of comical that, you know, somebody makes fun of somebody saying, hey, you don't really actually own the home. And, you know, I was just like, yeah. And I think everybody who owns a home is well aware of that every time they pay their taxes, right? Every time they pay the insurance, every time they're doing, you know, stuff that is beyond like what it is that this is my property, I get to keep this kind of thing. So, yeah, there's that. But, you know, you also get to own the equity. I mean, yeah, I mean, when I sell the house, I get that. I own that. I own that part of it. So yeah, like you don't really actually own the home, but I do actually own the equity, you know? Right? If I own it outright, I do actually own the profit that I make after I sell it. So yeah, you don't actually own the home. That's true, but you do actually own the money that comes from that. Too cynical? Is that what's happening? Oops. Survival of the fittest, survival of the most evil. I bought a rat-infested house years ago. I got it gutted and cleared it up myself. Now I'm doing okay, but you have to think ahead. Yeah, and you have to be willing to work hard. Don't buy gold and silver, I will. Who does the government penalize? Not permit small living spaces like that. It seems like a limit on property owners' wealth because they then need more property to house the same number of people. The more evil you are, the better I'll be off. Better you'll be off in economy spectrum. It's not like, yeah, and I mean, whether it's evil or not, like, I mean, the thing is like most of the people that I find who are fairly well off, doing well, landlords, got businesses, have money or whatever, are actually fairly generous, decent people. Now, when they are, with the direction of where their money goes, but when they see that they can help, they do, right? Now, most people who have no ability to help, the only thing that they can offer is their time, which is incredibly valuable, right? But if you think about it, if somebody is offering up finances or money or whatever, that's them giving up their past time, right? See, when you offer your future time, it's different from giving up past time. You can't get it back. See, I can make the choice from here on, hey, I'm going to invest some time with you or to repay it, right? And I know that this time is done. But once I have given up my past, I can't get it back. That's pretty generous, you think, right? I mean, both of them are generous. And owning a home, really owning? No. And I mean, yeah, we understand that. Like, get this. You're not actually a free person in the United States either, right? You have a social security card. Did you pay taxes? Right? You're not a free person in this country. How many people do you know could actually spit out the Constitution? The first 10 amendments, not even the whole Constitution, just I mean, like anybody can do the whole Constitution. Just the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Right? Very few people. I've met very, very, very few people who memorize the Bill of Rights. Right? But yet they want to tell me that I need to vote. They need to tell me on who it is I need to vote for, but that they can't tell me what the rights are, right? What the Bill of Rights are. I find that quite odd. That here they're telling me, no, you should vote for this guy, and I'm like, okay, oh yeah, you want me to vote for this guy? Okay, I'll vote for that guy. You tell me right now what the Bill of Rights are, and I'll vote for that guy, all right? Because if you can't tell me what the Bill of Rights are, then how do you know that that guy's going to protect the Bill of Rights? How do you even know that he can protect the Bill of Rights? How do we know that he even should protect the Bill of Rights? Huh? That's the problem. It's not his responsibility. It's my responsibility. And by voting these people in, right? It's not a constitutional act. Right? It's not. It's just straight up. It's unconstitutional by having people in office who behave unconstitutionally. Right? You can't accept it. The moment that you accept a little bit into your life, you will accept it all. And that's the problem that we are now facing. See, this is the reason why I've given up on it all. This is the reason why I don't even care about fighting the Fed. Like, here, I got the end the Fed hat on, right? But who cares, right? At this point, what difference does it make? And so the country is lost, right? There is no constitutional government. So people say, go vote, you need to vote. And I'm like, okay, for what? A non-constitutional government? Okay, great, sounds fun to me. No, thank you. I'll just decide that I'm just going to go ahead and behave in the way that I feel is most appropriate for me and my family, because voting for an unconstitutional government and continuing to vote for an unconstitutional government is not something I feel like doing. And, this is not something that I find is an appropriate behavior as a constitutional American, is to continue on engaging in such behaviors. That's really what it comes down to. If you accept it for what it is, then you have accepted the fact that it's like you don't want to be a constitution. You don't want to have it. And I don't accept it. I don't accept that belief, and I don't accept that. Right? I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the constitutional rights of American citizens. I believe that we should all understand and know what our rights are. And since most people don't, I just don't feel that most people can even have the mental capacity to vote. You know, I mean, I don't like, not for the intelligence that they have from like all the things that they learned in life and all the schooling and everything like that. I'm sure they're quite intelligent, but most people have no clue about the Constitution. Uh, And since they don't realize that they're voting for people that don't behave in within the confines of the Constitution. That's sad. It's just like it's a horrible condition now. And I just don't find any need to participate in it. I don't even have any reason to even occupy my mind's thoughts around the political arena and environment and all that other crap that comes with it. Like, they're like, oh, they're gonna do this to your gun rights, and I'm like, oh, good lord, whatever, right? I mean, as long as we still have a constitution, I have my house, I have my constitution. That's that. I don't need anybody else. I don't need anybody's permission. I don't need anybody's laws. I don't need anybody's their crap or their fear tactics or anything else. I got I got I'm cool, right? Okay. Like, I don't need like all this stuff. They're gonna do this new world order, blah blah blah, gun rights, all that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry. Does the Constitution still exist? Yeah. Okay, I'm good. I don't need any of the bullshit. Okay. Hence, rich man's only use other people's time and other people's money because there is only so much time. That's right. So true. No jive turkeys knocking after the divorce. Patrick Henry didn't sign the Constitution, few others too. Why? I don't need a piece of paper to tell my rights as a human. No, you don't, Wayne. That's right. You really don't. And that's the thing about it is just like when you have like a situation in which that, the people just like they demand something to happen, right? And so, like, even back in the day when they developed the Constitution, they limited this Constitution. Like, here you got anarchy, right? And they put it just this side of anarchy. And like, hey, we're going to try and limit this thing to the. Hey, what's happening, dude?
Hey.
You want to say hi?
No.
Yeah, you all remember Freddie, right? Join in on the live stream. So, guys just wanted to say hi. But they put it just this side of anarchy, right? And they're like, okay, so here's the constitutional republic if you guys can hold on to it, right? But it's going to be very difficult because you're going to really this thing isn't going to be easy. So because you got it like just this side, and they just made it worse and worse and worse to the draconian side of control and more government and more intrusion in your life, right? So did they set up a perfect system? No, of course not. But they were trying to give you something that had as much freedom as possible with a limited government, and it was going to be difficult to hold on to it. And as time went on, essentially it wasn't capable. People weren't capable of doing it. However, since they used this illusion, this guise of a constitutional republic environment that we now live in, and that we all have officials who swear an oath to the Constitution and stuff like that. Well, I would like for you to I can uphold the Constitution. I can make you uphold to it. Like when I'm out there conducting myself, I conduct myself in a constitutional way, right? Meaning that I don't do things that are going to have any kind of authority come and question me, because I don't want to be questioned by authority. And if authority does come and question me, my first question to them is, what have I done to commit a crime, committing a crime, or about to commit a crime? Right? So if you can't articulate one of those things to me, then I'm not going to have a conversation. Right? In fact, I'm not going to identify who I am. I'm not going to do any of that stuff because I understand what my rights are. And I also understand that there is absolutely nothing that can be a benefit to you by saying anything to the police. Right? Never. There's never any time and under any circumstances should you ever say anything to a police officer for any reason. Right? And now this isn't just me coming up with some weird thought. This is coming directly from a Supreme Court justice from back in like the 50s or 60s or something. And this is what they said, that, your rights are yours. You have to retain them, and the moment that you relinquish them out there, you don't get them back. You have to retain them in yourself, right? That's it. All right. Cool. Got Steve A with the $10. My son wants to go back to Cannon Beach this summer. What's the best window for weather? It's rainy last time in late September. Yeah, late September is no good. What you want to do is like June, July, August are your best shots, right? June, July, August is usually pretty good. But even like right now, here it is June. It's rained quite a few times this month. It was raining yesterday morning. Again, it was raining this morning a little bit. It was drizzling. So there is no time, right? I mean, it rains just about every single day in our area. There are about 3 months out of the year where it doesn't rain, but those days don't run consecutively, right? So you'll get, a couple of nice weeks, maybe you get a month, where it's nice in the summertime. You get a couple of nice weeks in February, which is really odd. We all joke around about it because every February there's 2 nice weeks. It tricks everybody, right? Everybody thinks that, summer is here. They start getting into like the spring gardening kind of feel and stuff like that, not realizing that there's still, chances of snow, coming. But it's weird to think, but there is. Like in the middle of winter in February, there's 2 really nice weeks where you get some really decent weather that really just tricks everybody. But if I was to shoot for a couple of months, it would be, June, July, and August. Uh, How about a paper to tell you your rights as an American? I don't have a paper that tells me the rights, right? Now, I learned those rights, but that paper doesn't, like, I'm the one who's responsible for it. Like, the moment that somebody comes up and says, hey, man, where are you going? What are you doing? What is this, right? You have to be able to articulate to them, no, I'm not going to tell you where I'm going because, like, you don't have to articulate anything to them, right? They have to articulate to you what it is that you are doing that's illegal. Otherwise, there is no reason for you to relinquish anything to them. Not your identity, nothing, right? And, just like you don't have to memorize the entire thing word for word. There's only one constitutional right that you absolutely have to memorize word for word, verbatim, right? And that's the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. The rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons and things to be seized. Show me the warrant. And not to show me a warrant, as All Nighter has, reaffirmed and told us, right, that it has to be a signed warrant because the police can go get a warrant, right, and show you, hey, we got a warrant. But unless it's signed by the judge, it's just a warrant. It doesn't exist until it's signed. It's not a real one. And so ultimately, if you don't have a warrant, then I don't have any reason to talk to you anymore, right? Nor did I have any reason to talk to you to begin with. And so therefore, I'm not going to have any kind of communication. And by understanding the Fourth Amendment and being able to articulate it in such fashion, ends it right there, right? That's all you need. And understanding that is how it is that you are able to protect your rights. Now, most of the other ones are really aren't not nearly as needed in the moment as that one is, the Fourth Amendment, right? That's the only one that is protecting you in the moment. The right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, right? That is by far the most important one that you have to know and be able to stand firm on at the moment that it's being infringed. Because the moment that it is infringed, there's nothing you can do about it. It's over. There's no little green guy going to pop out saying, hey, you know what? I think your rights might be in question right now, right? And if you relinquish them and you say, yeah, go ahead and search, there's nothing there's no lawyer or anything that can do. Hey, man, you gave it up, you know? Trump doesn't want a constitutional country, yet people will vote for this sucker to go figure. I don't think any of them want a constitutional republic, to be honest with you. Alrighty. Which wouldn't make sense. Let's see. If you read the Bible, God was pretty shitty when it came to personal rights. Oh, I wouldn't know. All right. They'll find some probable cause. Okay. But, okay, they'll find some probable cause. Then what are you going to give them probable cause? Like, you can be, it's not hard to walk around and behave, right? Like, I have never, ever had any kind of confrontation with the police. Never had any kind of, even when like I was a kid and I got, in trouble for stuff, I've never had any issues. Like, I mean, when I was in trouble, I was in trouble. It was because I got caught, right? And I never got any real deep trouble or anything like that. But I've never had any issues with the police officers. Then again, I won't cross the street unless the sign says I can. Right? I don't give them any reason to pull me over. Right? I don't speed. I don't, I use my turn signals. I'm all licensed. I do all the stuff because I don't want to have to do anything that has a defending of my rights. I don't want to have to do that. So I don't give them any opportunity for that to occur. Like, there is no reason for a police officer to talk to me for any reason. Like, I don't have to not talk to them. I don't give them any reason to talk to me. Right? And if I'm talking to them, it's because I'm choosing to do it. And that's the way I conduct myself. Most people run from the police or something. I don't do that. Like, I don't run from the cops. Like, that's not me. In fact, I'm always the one who actually at the store, I'm the first one to jump up there and help the police officers because I know most of them, and so they're like my friends. All right. Let's see, where are we at here? We're at 624 likes. My gosh, you guys are just tearing this up. 625 likes. All right, 2 hours and 16 minutes into it. You guys are tearing the like buttons up. You're sending me the super chats. You're keeping this thing going like crazy. I mean, we might as well just keep going here. 626 likes. Let's do it. Let's see if you can get it to 650. You get it up to 650, we'll continue on. All right. The Fed interest rates are affecting Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan's mortgage rates because the Haktua girl thinks the housing market is going to crash when Trump runs in 2024. Hit the like button. 1,000 likes. The Haktua girl. I can't believe that thing is taken off as bad as it is. Oh my God. That poor girl, she'll never live that down. I guess everybody gets famous for something. All right. Cops looking for a cosign sitting gin cut in the meantime. All right. Laws are freeze-dried morals. She sells merch. Gosh, already, yeah, right. T-shirts and whatnot. NWA, F the police, just saying. Freedom is an illusion. Funny how auditors will fight for their rights, but not their marriage. She's doing merch for it. Please make a big prediction for the remainder of the year. A big prediction? My big prediction is there's going to be mass uncertainty. Yeah? You think that's going to play out? Do you think there's going to be mass uncertainty in the future? I don't know. I don't know if that's a really good prediction. All right, scary. Where the money going to gone? Drivers cosign checks, which is a ticket, and they are unknown. Cops are thieves. She got fired. She was a kinder teacher. Was she? Oh man. Yeah, I could imagine getting fired for that one, but that's okay. You're probably making a bunch of money selling t-shirts now, so, You got to be careful on what you do. Like, that's just the thing. Like, if you portraying yourself as to be one person and then you end up being another person out there, and then people go like, wow, who's this other person? All of a sudden you disrupt the universe, you get fired and stuff, right? Because you're acting as two different people. And not saying like she wasn't qualified to be a kinder teacher, right? A kindergarten teacher. That's cool. Like, I mean, I'm sure she's totally qualified to do that. And being drunk out there in a party zone, there's nothing wrong with that either, right? So there's nothing wrong with either one of these two, but yet they don't necessarily jive together, right? Because you're trying to portray like you're like this nice person who's going to be like putting these morals into the, like higher standard morals or whatever, ethics, whatever you want to call it, into the idea of like being around these kids, but yet they don't want necessarily this party behavior being around them, but yet it's totally two naturally occurring things that are going on there. Because we have such a broad social media and capabilities, doing something so simple as just being drunk in public and telling a joke totally disrupts the entire universe for you like that, right? It's just so sad to think, I mean, I saw that and I thought, man, this girl's never going to live it down. But now to even think about that being a repercussion on how that one little statement sent a ripple throughout the rest of the universe that got her all the way to the point that she's being fired, but yet maybe able to make a bunch of money selling merch. I mean, isn't it weird how that works, right? That simple tossing of that particular event, right? All right. My economic prediction is that if the economy is good, rich people will get richer, and if the economy is bad, rich people will get richer. Well, Jeff, that's like a short way of describing the Cantillon effect, but yeah, okay. What time is it? 10:36. All right. To a girl. All right, 350 away from 1,000 likes. YouTube algo is amazing. Yeah, it's really fun. Like, it's when you start hitting the like button, what it does is it picks it up and starts sending it out there for more people, and then people join in. And not everybody's going to sit around for 2.5 hours, but people will sit around for a half an hour or whatever, hit the like button, and so it's just this constant stream of people coming into the live stream. It may not be the same people from beginning to end, so we'll just keep going. Talk about whatever it is you want to. All right, what's your opinion on the current state of the housing market? Well, I think that's probably something that the first 10 minutes of the video really covered. But I mean, I think that if we just kind of look at some of the situations that are happening with the rental income, like the rental part of things, where people are spending so much more of their income on rental, leaving them very little opportunity to save. And if you have very little opportunity to save, then you're going to have a harder time coming up with the money you need for a down payment. Now, on the flip side of that, the house prices are so elevated and the interest rates are so elevated that the payments are not necessarily available to the incomes that people are making, meaning that they just don't earn enough to make those payments. So what they have to do is they have to put ever increasing amounts of a down payment on that house in order to bring the principal down far enough for them to get the loan for them to be able to make the payment on. But they can't come up with the down payment, the extra down payment, because they are paying so much more in rent, they can't save. So now the problem with it is for the home builder is that they don't have buyer traffic. Because the interest rates are so elevated, the buyers don't want to be there. And because the buyers don't want to be there because the prices are elevated. The prices are elevated because there's not enough inventory. And there's not enough inventory because the builders aren't there. And the builders aren't there, again, because the buyer traffic isn't there. Because they don't have enough down payment because they pay too much in rent. Again, because the house isn't. So I don't see any other way other than house prices are going to go up. The Cantillon effect is in full swing right now, and it's only going to get worse. As time goes on, you're going to find that the people who have purchased homes or had the ability to purchase homes will be on the other side of the wedge, regardless of their status or anything else. That's just that single opportunity, right, to be able to acquire a home is going to be the one thing that separates them from everybody else. And now there'll be other ways to separate yourself to get on the other side of the wedge, investments and, businesses or whatever it is that you got going on. But as far as like, working a 9 to 5 job or something of that nature, which is almost impossible to do and get a house, but that is the only way to get on the other side of the wedge if you're going to live just a normal, simple, everyday life without doing mass investments or business opportunities or winning the lottery or something. All right, so we're coming up at 2 hours, 2.5 hours. We got 663 likes. I don't even know, man. You guys are just nailing this like button so much. I'm thinking I'm not even keeping up. Like, where are we supposed to be at when we get to 2.5? Let's see here. In the next 5 minutes, let's get it up to like, I don't know, let's get it up to 700. I'm tired. I want to, I want to go do something else with the day. No, I would love being out here. I love doing this with you guys. I love discussing this stuff. I mean, I could do this all day, every day. In fact, I was thinking about maybe doing some live streaming on some of the other platforms just to kind of make them active. Like I was thinking about doing some like the X, like Twitter, whatever, X Spaces. I've never done it before, so I was checking that out. There's even a paid section of that, so maybe we can generate some more revenue for the channel by doing paid spaces. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Doing some live streams on other platforms. 675. You guys getting close. 25 away. Get it up. 25. Oh, 23 likes away. We got 5 more minutes, guys. YouTubers that always talk about how many likes they are getting seem like a dopamine junkie, kind of a turnoff. No, it's not really a dopamine junkie. What it is I'm trying to get more people to get the algorithm to get picked up and send it out there for more people to join in. By joining in, we get the comment section to be better, right? More comments, better that way. And when we have more people joining in, it actually is better for me in ad revenue, because when you have more people joining in or filtering through, the ad placements on their views also counts towards me being a little bit more wealthy every day. So it's not just a dopamine hit. Yeah, it's like a lot, 681. We're 19 away now, which is kind of like, yeah, you get a little bit off of it. But to be honest with you, like dopamine hits off of like YouTube, that's like a long time ago, man. I don't get it anymore. Not like I used to. I mean, I get more of a dopamine hit when somebody like sends me a happy birthday wish or something, like I haven't, that's like, I don't like, YouTube is just like, it's more of just a thing now. It's not, there was a time when I did. I used to be excited about seeing like the thumbs up and the likes and the comments and all that. And I still do get excited about it, but not in the same way. He's trying to make money, man. Help this man out. That's right. Thank you. I'm trying to make money. Happy birthday. Well, my birthday's next month. Not yet. But I appreciate it. All right. I like for economic reasons. Thank you. Replace dopamine with greed. I misspoke. That's it. It's, well, okay. Let me ask you something. Why else would I be out here? Like, I mean, I got a bunch of information, right? I could probably get out what I needed to get out in 5 minutes, right? So, and I, learned what I learned off of it. I like sharing this information because it helps me, not only hone the ability to be able to communicate, on the fly. So that's kind of fun. So it's kind of like, practice, I guess, so to say. This is like, that's what I'm almost doing here. But why would I be out here? Right? What, like, do you think like maybe like hanging out there in the sun doing nothing would be better? Like I do. Like, I mean, that's like, but I'm working here, right? We're trying to make money. We're trying to expand this channel. We're trying to do things that are, elevating into the future with more, I mean, I don't even know why I'm defending it. All right, you deserve to get paid for your time. Thank you, TM. I appreciate it. Make the money. Thank you. Yep. High interest rates are supposed to drive down prices. Yeah, and I mean, well, okay, let's talk about that for just a minute, because really there's a couple of schools of thought when it comes to higher interest rates are supposed to drive down prices. This is really the classical school of thinking, right? Is that, higher interest rates puts a burden on the consumer, and the consumer comes down, less consumption, supply demand imbalances come more in line with each other, and then the prices come down. And this is pretty typical to think about, but if you want to take it back into, it's going to be a little bit more complicated, but when we take it back into what's really happening when you have a low interest rate environment, because we just came off of incredibly historically low interest rates, but yet failed to find the inflationary scenario we were looking for. I'm talking about prior to the pandemic. Now, we have to understand why. Right? Why didn't it occur in the way that a lot of people would have anticipated with the low interest rate environment? Now, when you think about low interest rate, what that really means, right? Low interest rates means that you have a low return on your capital investment, meaning that I put some money out there, I give it some time, and then at the end of it, I get a return of interest rate. I get the principal, right, my capital back, plus I get a little bit of an interest. Now, when you're in a low interest rate environment, the amount of interest rate that you get back on that is really low, meaning that you don't really get a bunch of money to return back into the economy. Okay. When interest rates are high, you do get a lot of money back to return back into the economy. Right? So if you have a low interest rate environment, you actually have a disinflationary force that is actually taking place there, as the return on capital investment may not beat the inflationary scenario. Meaning by the time you get your money back in the interest rates, your purchasing power has diminished. That's a deflationary scenario on a low interest rate environment. You see? And that's what was occurring prior to the pandemic. Dr. Lacey Hunt talked a lot about that. Now, on the flip side of that, if you think back to the early 80s when interest rates were at 15%, like the 10-year treasury, a loan to the government of a 10-year, buying the 10-year treasury, like with $1 million, would give you a return of about $150,000 a year. Even today, that's not bad, right? But in the early 80s, that was killer. Like $150,000 a year for $1 million investment with the U.S. government had a lot of cars, houses, vacation, reinvestment. There was a lot of stuff happening with that interest rate being at a higher level that it was. Right? And so when you think about it, over time, interest rates elevated is actually an inflationary expectation going into the future. Low interest rates is a deflationary one. Although people don't see it that way. They see it opposite of that. Now, you could take it back into Cantillon's essay. When you see high interest rates, it's a sign that there is a good economy taking place and that people are eager to borrow money to buy materials to participate within the economy. But all else being equal, when you have low interest rates, it's showing a bad economy, and that there is an abundance of people out there who have a lack of available borrowers, meaning that they are looking for a place to put this money, but nobody wants to borrow it because nobody wants to participate within the economy because things are slow. So they don't want to borrow the money, and they don't want to buy the materials, and they don't want to participate in selling those materials or their business into the economy. So low interest rates is showing a low, slow economy. High interest rates are showing a high, fast economy. It's very backwards from the way anybody is thinking. But you have to understand it from the economic forces of Cantillon's essay from back in the day, and how interest rates were established and what it really meant, to today, where we have manipulations and money printing and all kinds of stuff, which makes it a very different kind of environment. Although the low interest rates will spark that initial like flash in the pan of consuming and maybe some business investments, it's not long standing like a higher interest rates that is actually rolling money back into the economy over time. All right, we got 700 likes. Let's keep her going. All right. Yes, commercial real estate is crashing. Wayne Smith. So what is a bus conversion? As a matter of fact, now that we are in the end stage of capitalism or imperialism, I think we should revert back to the free economy system. Well, if that was to take place, if we were to go back to that, everybody would immediately fall into depressionary conditions. Retired people would be like out on the streets with no medical care and no place to live. It would be a horrible experience. Now, I personally, like, I think I'm mentally prepared for it. I don't know if I'm necessarily physically prepared for it, like with like, tools and ammo and all the other things that I would need in that kind of environment. But I mean, at least I kind of thought about it and what that would look like. And I cannot imagine that scenario being anything even remotely close to being pleasant, you know. All right, one year there was more women on HTE road than on the road than men. How many DUIs did they get? All right, when you rent your property out, you bake taxes and mortgage, if any, into the rent. I recently purchased a small 1 acre soybean farm, can turn it into a cocoa bean farm. Simon, what would you have been your plan if you weren't able to find your house in Astoria? I was talking about that with my wife earlier today, and I really don't know because I cannot buy this exact house right now. I cannot, like, not at the interest rates or the price that I had paid for it originally. Certainly couldn't do it at the price it's like listed for or estimated for on Zillow. But I couldn't get into this house. I wouldn't have been able to come up with I wouldn't have been able to afford the payment on it because right now, even as it was right at the very edge. Even with using YouTube money, it was still right there. And so I don't know what I would have done. I really don't. Like, I was like lost at the time. In fact, I felt very much forced into purchasing this house. So I don't know what I would have been forced into doing other than that. So, all right, commercial real estate is selling because a lot of people think like, well, you decided to buy that house. I didn't. Like, I decided to give in. That's what happened, right? Is that I didn't have any other choice. I looked around. I was like, I don't have a place to move. Like, I don't have any place to go to. In 30 days, I'm out and with no place to go. What do? Right? I felt forced. I didn't go off and say, okay, like, I am really wanting to buy a house right now and I'm going to enjoy this experience of shopping and looking around and taking my time and picking out the most beautiful, awesome house in the world. It didn't happen. It didn't happen that way because there wasn't any houses to choose from. Not in the area that I wanted to be in. If I was going to buy a house, I wanted it in a particular area. Right? And I wanted to give it time so that I would have my choice and what it is that I could purchase out there, and I wasn't given that. So I didn't choose to buy this house. It was forced upon me. And I am so thankful it did. Right? I'm so thankful that universal pressure that came upon me that was so hard of an experience for me to go through happened. It was as if I didn't have any other choice. The universe was just like, dude, it's time for you to own a house. You have no other choice. You are going to go out and get one, regardless if you want it or not, or whether you think you need it or not. It was like literally the universe was giving me no other choice. Yeah. You were like, how did you do it? And I was just like, I don't know. I didn't have any other choice. It took I didn't even think I could. Like at the time I was getting like every day I was talking with the mortgage lender. He's like, oh man, you got to come up with this. Oh man, you got to come up with that. Oh man, you had a foreclosure in your past. I can't even get you the loan now, man. You got to come up with we got to come up with a whole new loan and we got 2 weeks to figure this out. And I'm like, this ain't happening. This house is not happening. And he finally come up. He was just like, okay, man, out of all the stuff and everything that you went through and the foreclosure and everything, he goes, I found you a loan. Man. You're going to have to come up with more than twice of what it is that you have available for a down payment. Right? And I'm like, no, I don't have it. Like, I just don't have it. Like, I've saved a bunch of money that I got to pay taxes with. He was like, well, there's some of it. You're going to have to make payments on your taxes. He goes, but there's some of it. You're almost there. Right? And I'm like, what the hell? And so the universe not only recognized that I had exactly this much money that it took, right? Because when I was done, when I finally scrounged and dug into the ashtrays and the cushions and everywhere else I could scrounge money up from, just short of selling Bitcoin and silver, right? But every bit of cash I could find from every direction I could get it left me with $300 in my bank account. Like, tell me the universe was not forcing this upon me. It knew exactly how much money I had, right? And that's how much I needed in order to get into this house. And it gave me no other choice to go. Like, I couldn't find any place to live. I would have had to leave town. This is how it came down for me. I didn't choose this, it was forced upon me. I thank God I was in the position that I could do it. I am so thankful for what has happened since then. I look at the price of the value of the house and I'm thinking, man, I can't even get into this house. I'm in a wonderful location, a quiet neighborhood. I'm like literally like a quarter mile from where I grew up. You know? How did this happen? Right? Like sometimes things just occur and you don't have any other choice for it. You're just supposed to go with it. You're supposed to let it go and just go with it. This was one of them. I couldn't let it go. It tore me up, like mentally tore me up. I had like issues to deal with because of it, you know? uh, it's him being his natural self. Don't take it personally. He will get around to you. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a let me find it. Where's Crimson? Let me go find this. Here we go, Crimson. All right, he has been streaming 2 hours and there is less than 400 comments in this whole section. That's only 3.33 comments a minute, but he's missing 90% of the comments. Okay. If you want me to read all the comments, and even then it's a little difficult, you can join the members only live streams. Generally, I have about 30, 40 people who will be at any given time at max, will be on those members only live streams. For the most part, I generally will read almost all the comments. Here, when I'm doing a live stream that has hundreds of people, sometimes up close to 1,000 people, which I haven't seen in a while, but even, 3, 4, 500 people, conversation ends up starting to take place within the comments that don't have anything to do with me or even anything that I'm discussing. So I can't read all the comments. I apologize. I would love to, but I'm not going to, And I bring it back down to the most recent comments so that I can get closest to like the last thing I said and people can comment and question on that. If you have a question or you have something you need to state and you want me to state it, then, throw it in there with the super chat and it'll get read. Do you think silver is a good hedge against inflation? I don't. I think silver is a terrible hedge against anything other than an insurance policy. Silver is not meant, it's meant to do all kinds of wonderful things in the world, but some of the things that people say that it's meant to do, like inflation protection, it doesn't do it. It's never done it for me. Not in the history of the entire time that I've ever owned silver has it ever protected me from inflation. Not once. And I like silver. I like it a lot. Now, what it has done is provide me with an incredible insurance policy. So when I was broke, in debt, had no money, no car, no available transportation, it was a box of silver that I had that gave me the ability to then purchase a Tahoe from a buddy of mine who was willing to take 165 ounces of silver in trade. It was one of the coolest things that I had ever experienced from my silver purchases, and I said to myself, man, I will never be without silver again, ever. All right. But as far as trying to protect myself from inflation, it's never worked, not once. Like I don't even conceptualize it anymore as being an inflation hedge because it's just simply just never has done it. Like I've never found a time in my life that it did. Now it has worked great for giving me something outside of that third party claim that gave me the ability to sleep at night so I didn't have to worry about money in the bank or even like bills. Like, having a stack of silver said, well, yeah, I have those bills piling up, but at least I have some silver they can't take from me. And it gave me that ability to sleep. All right, we got 2 hours and 43 minutes into this, 718 likes, get it up to 750 and we'll continue on. So if you can get 30 likes in 2 minutes, we'll continue. Otherwise, we're going to cut the stream and go and enjoy the rest of the day doing something, whatever, Just leave, Crimson. No, he doesn't have to leave, but just understand this is the way it is. Thanks for the channel. Love you, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate you all being here. Deja vu. Love it. Love seeing you here. Opportunity arose. Luxury condo versus keeping the homestead. I don't know. What do you do? Luxury condo. Does it have a pool? I mean, that might be it. Like, if it has a pool, farming, pool. Farming, pool. I mean, I don't know. All right, I can't even afford Southwest Florida. I'm a nurse. We make poor salaries down here. Even though I have a decent down payment, I don't know what to do. Crazy times. And that's it. Like, what are you going to do? All right, you got 1 minute to get 10 likes. 11 likes, 10 likes. Bro, I'm a member and did support him. I will not continue. You should learn from this or ban me and keep crying about the economy. Crimson, bro, chill, man. What's the problem? What's going on, man? I mean, nobody's crying about the economy. We're all just trying to fix things here. We're trying to not fix things for ourselves and what it is that we feel that we need to do, right? And I mean, if you don't like being here, I totally get it, man. And yeah, go ahead and bail out. But it's like, I guess you are a member, aren't you? All right, Simon, what do you think about purchasing an assumable mortgage sub 2% at today's housing price? It's in California and would need to put down a large down payment. Well, I think that's probably going to be the next big trend, are assumable mortgages. And as people are assuming mortgages, they're going to find that they have to put up that ever bigger down payment, because people, like even me, if somebody was to assume my mortgage, I would look at that as saying, okay, well, I mean, not only do you have to pay, like, there's a huge chunk between what I owe and what I want, right? So you have to come up with that. That part's not assumable, right? So you're going to have to come up with that, and it's going to be, well over $100,000. So that part you might have to take out a much higher interest rate, but the rest of it, that's a pretty good deal. So between the two, you can offer up something that is better than what anybody else has available, right? And it's trying to sell the house at the full price with the high interest rate isn't as good of a deal as offering the majority of the house at a much lower interest rate, right? But then you have another chunk in there that's, the equity essentially in the house that is not going to be that low interest rate. But I think that's going to be a bigger trend going into the future. And I think there's opportunity within that to, then going to assume that mortgage at a lower interest rate, which is then, a better position to be in, less interest rates, right? There we go. Trade. Thank you very much. Trade MNQ. Thank you for the 99 cents. I very much appreciate it. We got it up to, we got to 747 likes. You guys didn't quite get it there, but that's okay. We're getting these super chats in, which is just as good. All right. Larry Bird, 4.99. Thoughts on using credit to sustain a business? You're making money, but you're always in debt. Well, okay, I thought about that for a little bit. Let's break that down kind of simply to what this could look like, because I actually think this is a good idea. All right. Now, me personally, let's say I have okay, here's a good one. The picnic bench, right? The picnic table over here. It cost about $100 in materials, maybe around $100 in materials, right? But I don't have $100, but I do have a credit card, right? So now I don't have $100 to buy the material, but I could use this credit card to buy the material, build the bench, sell the bench for $150, keep $50 for myself and pay the credit card back. Or maybe have an interest payment on it, sell it for $165, make a little bit of an interest payment, pay the credit card off. All right. And then keep the money for myself, and then never once ever use my own money to buy the material, just use my labor in conjunction with the credit. Right. And this can be done on a bigger scale. Right. So you use your skills in combination with the credit in order to acquire materials or to whatever it is you need to do out there. maybe it's, the purchasing of food or something like that to prepare and sell or something of that nature. But I think this is actually a really great idea. This is, something that is available to a lot of people out there, and they don't necessarily consider that as their business option, right? You start off small, you do enough picnic tables that then you sell one picnic table and it produces, you sell enough picnic tables from using your credit card purchases to have enough profit that then you can buy the material without using the credit card anymore, right? Or use the credit card to then advance your operation by buying machinery, then producing that much more tables that can then pay off the machinery, right? Again, like, you can start businesses off of something as simple as using a credit card to get going, and it's just literally buying the material to do one project. Man, I think Crimson kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. All right. $1.99. The Fed will hawk to the economy. That poor hawk. That poor girl. Actually, I shouldn't say that. She's probably making a ton of money off of it now. So, I need it at this point in my life. I earned it. Well, deja vu. Careful, right? Careful about. I earned this in my life. Moving into the luxuries now. That's just the thing. Like, you work hard, you produce, you saved, you got yourself into the position in which that you want to enjoy the money. This is the moment. This is the luxuries that people want to enjoy within their lives and they worked hard for. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it's the same reason why the apartments and everything else are going to go up in price. Right? It's because of that move into them. And I hope you really enjoy it, Deja Vu. And I'm not trying to knock it at all. All right. Cancer or Leo, early July or late July. When are you born? All right, Tahan, you're gonna love this one. Let me see. I won't show it to you now, but I got a big old lion tattooed on my arm. Selling all of my rental properties on owner financing. Did you think this is a good idea? Yeah. I mean, I think if you're I think if you're in a position in which that you can handle some of the, like, unforeseens that are going to come from that, like, have to deal with, like, the tenant who isn't paying and stuff like that. But right now, I mean, shit, if you can get an interest rate that's elevated, that's a pretty good return on it, especially if you're owner financing it and it's like you're in retirement age. I mean, hell, you can get like money off of those properties, and then if they happen to not pay, then you just repossess it or whatever. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but that's just me personally, and I think that would actually be a little bit more for the appetite of risk that is involved with dealing with people and them not making payments or something. All right, YouTube algo will get this stream to 1,000 likes. Well, we're at 759 likes right now. 2 hours and 52 minutes into this live stream, which is just going on forever and ever because you guys keep hitting the like button like you do. So if you get it up to, say, 800 likes, that's 40 likes in the next 8 minutes, right? Then we'll continue on live streaming. Otherwise, we're going to call it quits at 3. All right, dude, you're awesome. Don't let that guy get to you. No, I'm not. Crimson is cool. I mean, what is, like, I mean, everybody has attitudes towards things, and I'm not, I mean, not everybody's going to think I do a good job. I got to accept that, Selling all of my rental properties on, oh no, we already did that. I was purchasing 2 houses between 2010 and 2018. All right, people had nothing. They were paycheck to paycheck, no credit. At least for me, that was the case. Ensure they don't want more than 5% usage of 2% or 2-ton car. All right. Last one to a divorce, but someone in here should do the picnic table experiment and make a YouTube channel out of it. Actually, I thought about that, Steve. I thought that would be a great one for Freddie to do this summer. Like, I have a picnic table right there. Let me spin it around so you guys can see it. Right there. So I built that one last summer with them. And it was a little over $100 in material. It was just kind of a simple design that we had put together, just for fun, really. And we were planning on selling it just to see what we could get for it. But right now, like, I see like picnic tables, like through like the big box stores or whatever, are super, super cheap. They're like as much as, like, they're selling them for as much as I paid for the material on that one. Now, granted, they're probably not nearly as good of a picnic table, but, it is possible. Like, I mean, I guess it took me maybe, I don't know how long it took me to put it together. It didn't take me that long. Maybe 2 or 3 hours of cutting it up. And I didn't, like, if I had, like, planned and, really went for it, I could probably knock it out in an hour. But, it took me like 2 or 3 hours to do it. And then, it took me a couple hours to stain it. So, I mean, I probably put a day, and you could probably knock that time down pretty quick if you were to, like, have your plan for assembly. But I was thinking personally, man, I would really want like $250 or $300 for the picnic table. I was thinking, double the cost of the material. And it doesn't seem like that would be very reasonable when you're competing against somebody who's selling them for $100, If you made it out of cedar or a higher quality material, then you would end up having to sell it for quite a bit more. You would have to end up asking like $500 for it, and then you would have to, like, your chances of finding somebody to buy it is going to be very remote. There will be some people out there, but, you want to sell it quickly, right? All right, moving on. Lady V, thank you very much for the $5. If you had multiple rental properties, would you sell right now? I feel like property determines one's net worth. It's a hard decision to make. I wouldn't. I would be getting into properties. I wouldn't consider selling them right now. Somebody asked me if it was a good idea to do the owner finance. I believe that is, but that's if you're planning on selling. Like, if you're not planning on selling, I think it's better to keep your property. If you're, like, on the fence of whether should I sell or not sell, don't sell, right? Keep your properties, because being the property owner is by far the number one way of keeping yourself from falling to the other side of the wedge. Now, if you have all kinds of other investments that are paying you and stuff like that, and the property is just like that, not that big of a deal, then okay, yeah, maybe unload the properties just to get out from underneath them. But if that's the only income that you have, I wouldn't go for the cash, right? I would go for the income stream from it, personally. That would be me. And then also be safe in the understanding that there's not a lot of, like, new construction taking place, and that the property values are going up. So, I don't think I don't see the properties going down in the future like a lot of people do. I just don't see that. All right, $2 from Hurley. Appreciate you. Well, thank you so much for the $2. Good looking table. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm buying a house, number 6, with my cash, not taking any more mortgages. I just met a blueberry farmer from Astoria. Lady V, I am knocking down my portfolio to have some extra cash for some uncertain times to come. Just me, though, not financial advice. If you autograph it, I'll buy it. What, the table? How are you going to get a deja vu? I'll totally sign it. I'll sign it. All right. Where are we at here? 772. You got 3 minutes to get 28 likes. You got 2 minutes, 28 likes. We'll continue on live streaming. Otherwise, we're going to end this at 3 o'clock, and which we should probably do because, we got it's Sunday. Let's go do something with our day, right? All right, property values are dropping. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. People keep saying that property values are dropping. I see in some areas property values are dropping, but if you look across the board, home prices are going up. right? There's a lot of housing markets, and now you can isolate it down to certain areas, but go and take a look at the broad look at home prices and home availability, the prices that homes are selling for, the amount of mortgages that are being issued, the amount of mortgages that are underwater, right? Go and look at some of these things out there that would be telling of like a housing market price downfall, and you're not going to find it. You're going to find some areas are under pressure, and I would imagine areas like mine, even this house, right, on a Zillow estimate has lost $80,000 from the height of the Zillow estimate, which was so ridiculously high last year. I couldn't even possibly imagine that being anywhere near realistic. So when I saw $80,000 come off of it, I'm like, that makes sense, right? That totally makes sense, right? And I didn't even consider that as equity, right? Like I didn't. But now that it's come down and it's bounced around where it's at now, which is still dramatically higher from the price that I had paid for it, and it's been here for some time, like it's bounced around for a few months. I'm thinking, yeah, there is room to come down a lot, like a lot, to even get to where I paid for it. Like I could see that happening, but I can't imagine it being so significant that it would take it all the way down to being underwater, which is where I think a lot of people are sitting is in a position very much like I am, right? And that the chances of them ever being in a position in which that they are forced to sell or underwater or losing their investment isn't necessarily in the cards. Now, for the people who have purchased maybe in the last couple of years, and I mean just in like maybe more like in the last year and a half, possibly. Now, there could be a handful of those people who could go underwater, but there's very few of those. There's not that many houses that have sold in the last year at these incredibly high prices. So even if the prices do come down, it's only going to go for a handful of people going underwater. Most of them are going to be in a position like me where it's going to have to substantially come down before they even get close to being underwater. Alrighty, guys, you came close. You got to 781. I so appreciate everybody being here, but I think it's time to cut this live stream to an end. Thank you, Crimson, for being here. Thank you for being a member. And I'm not making fun of you, bro. I really do appreciate you. Homes peaked in July. In fact, here, I'll read your comment. Homes peaked in July 2022, 80,000 price cut. There is a pullback. Next step in vertical movement. Don't be a sheep or you will stay in the pen. Yeah. All right. Appreciate you all for being here. Thank you very much for hitting that like button. Even now, hitting the like button, trying to get it up to the 800. The algorithm is going to love this video. It's going to spread it around for more people to visit the information that we had talked about, especially towards the beginning of the video. We got $73.95 in super chats because you guys are always so generous with them super chats supporting the Uneducated Economist. Thank you very much for doing that. Thank you very much for joining the channel like Crimson did, but he says he's backing out because he doesn't think it's good, valuable information. But I appreciate you for at least joining in for 1 month and for the $1 a month membership, supporting the Uneducated Economist. Looking to get that up to 10,000 people, so tell all your friends about it and get them to join and become a member of the channel as well. We get it up to 10,000 and I can quit my W-2 job and go and pursue doing Uneducated Economist for real in a big time fashion. So Crimson is a good guy. He is, I mean, you're damn right. Yeah, he's got good attitude too. I like it. All right, Yui, your channel is great, man. Thank you very much. Please think about doing a meet and greet one day. Yes, Lady V, that sounds like a great opportunity. One of the ideas that I had was to come up with a really good presentation, something that I could take on the road, something that I could do like at the Rebel Capitalist or something, and, I could refine it as I need to. But to come up with a really, really good presentation, something with like do a big screen or something like that and have like, stuff that you can look at and graphs or whatever, and really do something up really awesome, and then do a free presentation at a local Grange that isn't too far from where I live. Like rent the Grange. It can hold like literally like 300 people or something. It's huge. And put it on. Do a one free show just to get the practice, get the presentation, do this meet and greet and have a bunch of people come and hang out, like in the middle of like nowhere at this Grange and do the Uneducated Economist presentation. I think that would be a lot of fun. It's something that's been rolling around in my head, and if not, then I might do the Liberty Theater. I've been in contact with those people, well, slightly, not heavily, but just kind of threw the idea around. I'm going to the Liberty Theater, which is a really old school theater in Astoria. It's really nice. I mean, it's like very ornate and, very, very beautiful place. And it's got 650 seats that are available, and they can handle a huge chunk of not only people, but they have sound equipment and volunteer staff and all kinds of stuff that would make that a very, very awesome venue to try and do the presentation at. And that would be fun to get like other people, like it'd be cool to get a big name like George Gammon or somebody to join in on it. I think that would be a lot of fun. But anyway, we're going to call it quits. We got 794 people who have hit that like button, with 338 people watching to the end. $73.95 in super chats, because you guys are always so awesome and amazing at supporting the Uneducated Economist. What is a safe perpetual SWR for a fire portfolio, bro? I don't know. What's an SWR? All right. Do a meet and greet, but don't talk about economics at all. Just call bingo. Yeah. You can do, yeah, that's actually something that you can do. You can meet me anytime any Sunday evening. All right? Any Sunday evening you want. You come down to the Workers Tavern in Astoria, Oregon, and play bingo. And, we'll find a moment either after bingo or maybe during a break, and we can hang out and talk. I've had a few people who have actually joined in at the bingo game just to come down and say, hey, man, I just wanted to meet you, play the bingo game, say that I did it. And, and I've had quite a few people do that. All right. Safe withdrawal rate. Oh, yeah. It was postulated that 3% is a safe perpetual adjusted rate for the last 120 years of the S&P 500. I don't know. I'm not much of an investor, so I really wouldn't know. I don't know what a safe interest rate would be, or a safe, withdrawal rate or whatever. I think that's probably more for an investment channel or financial advisor type of person. I'm really more into like monetary policy, more into like macroeconomics, more into understanding what it is that you need to know for yourself. Like, I don't know exactly what it is that you need to do in order to conduct yourself. But once you kind of understand the economics, then you can look back at your own life and say, man, I need to get into dividend paying stocks, or I need to get into rentals, or I need to get into something. And then from that point on, you can start learning what it is that you need to get into to make the best decisions there, Yui, I got some business propositions for you. I'm going to see you in Astoria. Right on, Larry. Yeah. This sounds good, man. I just learned that the Hakatui girl has the same last name as me. I wonder if we're related. Well, you never know. You might be able to capitalize on that. All right. Okay. When X live chats? I don't know. That might be kind of fun, right? I'll tell you what. Let me figure that one out, and I will do some announcements on it, like maybe here on YouTube or something before I do it, so we can actually get a group to be there, so it's just not like an empty space. And then we'll go from there and we'll try it out. I'll try and make some time to schedule not only at least one members only video here on YouTube, right? Because that's something I've kind of promised you guys anyway, to get at least one, if not two, but then also schedule like an Instagram live stream and maybe an X live stream. And, maybe start there and try and do that consistently for a month. Like, if I could do that consistently for a month, then maybe I'll be like, able to keep that going regularly. Because the hard part for me is like doing something like this and then try and being consistent with it, which is difficult, because like I can throw a lot of effort at it, but then it's just like, man, it's overwhelming, and then I don't do it anymore, and people are like, how come you don't do that anymore? And it's just like, because like, it's hard to stay consistent. But again, if you join this channel at $1 a month and we get 10,000 people to do it, I can be consistent in all kinds of stuff. All right. Crimson is about 2 hours from Portland. Well, right on. So we can meet too. All right. Mind the verbiage of all your previous videos for gems. All right. Value in an irrelevant way. I mean that. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Uneducated Economist. We'll catch you on the next one. You guys let me know.